Story 1.
I cheated on my husband and faced unimaginable consequences that changed both our lives forever. I'm telling this fully aware that many will dislike me for my actions and the consequences of my betrayal. Reading my own words is disgusting because I know what I did is unforgivable. I understand too well how needlessly tragic the events were. My hope is simply that my story can be shared with anyone in a relationship, and maybe it prevents future betrayals. Specifically, I hope someone cheating or thinking about it might read this and pause. Many might think my example of what can go wrong being unfaithful is a rare occurrence. People more knowledgeable than I am have told me my situation is sadly not unique. But I'm willing to take the hate I'll receive by sharing this if it prevents even one person from breaking a loved one's heart. I'm a 28-year-old woman married to a wonderful man I'll call William. 8 months ago, he confronted me with proof I'd been emotionally and physically unfaithful. A few days later, he committed self-destruction. Typing those words out has caused people I don't even know to hate me. I couldn't believe I had the capacity to do something so evil, hurting someone I'd loved since childhood. But I did it. If you'd asked either me or William if either of us would ever be unfaithful, we both would have laughed. But to my shock, I allowed myself to lose focus and stray. I knew it would destroy him if he ever found out, but I took the heart of the man I loved and crushed it so cruelly he couldn't endure the pain of this life anymore. To those thinking I don't deserve to be breathing, I agree. I've attempted self-destruction twice. I'm convinced there's a reason I'm still here. For now, I've convinced myself that the longer I live, the more I suffer, and I don't deserve the mercy of self-destruction. Honestly, William and I grew up together. I can remember my early youth, and I always knew William. We were in the same Sunday school and public school classes. Our families were friends long before we came along. He always made me laugh. Kids can be mean, but William never was. I realized I thought he was cute in 6th grade, and it became an official crush in high school. William and I were each other's only loves from early high school through college. We were best friends and cherished each other. After graduation, we took a year to get stable jobs near our families and decided to get married. We took vacations together and were ravenous for each other. The only time closeness was off the table was during that time of the month, but we'd make love for hours. Beautiful moments of passion, and I threw it all away for something tawdry, cheap, and worthless. We were planning to have children, knew their names, and were both pure. He was my first everything, and I was his. Part of me wishes I could say I had a drunken one-night stand, but no, I got involved with a man inferior to my husband. I didn't even consider the possibility that a friendship with another man could lead to an attachment forming. My husband and I had a strong marriage. As foolish as it sounds now, we really did. My husband was the epitome of strength, and I was the weak one. Before this, I considered myself a strong woman. It's just that no one ever told me that while our relationship was strong, no relationship is bulletproof. There's not a day that goes by that I don't wish someone had shot me before anything I did became secretive. It's an indisputable fact. The world would be far better with my husband here instead of me. I had many chances to stop it before anything happened, and I had no reason to allow anything to happen. After a brief and heated conversation, he walked out, and I never spoke to him again. I tried to contact him in every way I could think of. I tried so many times just to let him know I'm truly sorry and that I hate what I did. My text to him never showed anything but an unread status to me, so I doubt he read any emails or heard any voicemails. But everyone said I needed to give him space and time to think. 2 nights after William confronted me, at 3:17 a.m., there was a loud knock at the front door. I turned on the lights, thinking it might be someone drunk wanting to curse me out or worse. Then there was another loud knock, and I quickly put on a hoodie before going to the door. When I opened it and saw 2 policemen, I knew they could be there for many reasons, but I instantly understood why they were there. They told me my husband's body had been found due to an apparent self-destruction, and it devastated me. I dropped to my knees wailing, tearing at my skin and hair as the police tried to calm me down. When the EMTs arrived, I was sitting on the steps, rocking back and forth, repeating apologies. I couldn't make it to the funeral, even if William's family had allowed my family to attend. I was kept sedated for days. The first thing I wanted to do when I got out was visit William's grave, but nobody knew where his parents had him buried, and that hurt deeply. That night, I attempted self-destruction for the first time. I've now been hospitalized twice for attempted self-destruction. I'm not asking for pity. In fact, I don't want it. Nothing can take away this heartache, and nothing can numb it. Part of me wishes I had somehow forced him to see me, just for a moment, to tell him how sorry I am and that I knew our marriage was over. But I didn't get that. No, I didn't deserve it. I have to face the fact that what I did was so vile that making my husband see me might have forced him to take his life even sooner. Many people have said my actions led him to take his life, and I don't doubt it. Until that horrible day, we were incredibly happy. No self-destruction note verified I caused his passing away, but we had been so happy, loving nearly every moment together. To go from that bliss to grief quickly ended him. I ended him. My words, actions, and thoughts betrayed us. Both. Regret doesn't damage you. If it did, I would have died before my husband ever confronted me. When COVID hit, William and I quarantined together. I taught at an exclusive private school, and our salary was assured as long as isolation was needed. William worked from home, making progress on a project. Despite the world's worries, we enjoyed our time together, getting closer. I am truly sorry for those who lost a loved one to the horrible disease, but my husband and I grew closer during those weeks. We joked about others struggling with family time. We simply couldn't get enough of each other. After the first month, we agreed to limit arguments to once a day for about a week. Our only argument during quarantine was about doing laundry just to put clean sheets on the bed again. I cheated on that man, leading him to end his life due to my actions. I hate myself in many ways, but knowing I had it all is the most difficult pill to swallow. My affair with Paul, the lacrosse coach, started innocently during Zoom meetings. No attraction was present when we met face to face. There was zero attraction, at least from me, and I didn't sense any lustful attention from him toward me. During that introduction, I learned he was engaged, and I told him I was happily married. No closeness, tension, or anything hinting it would ever be a possibility. The school allowed half the staff and students to attend in person for a week, while the other half used Zoom. The next week, they switched. This was to help with social distancing and the students' feelings of isolation. While eating lunch one day before my next class, I got an email from Paul asking me to edit toasts and jokes for his upcoming wedding. I was used to editing, so it was nothing I felt important enough to tell William. Since it pertained to Paul's wedding, I saw no reason to bore my husband with details about that day. The email included a toast to Paul's parents and to the bride's parents. I took what he said and added a few phrases to tug at the heartstrings of all who attended. The jokes aimed at his brother, who was the best man, were really funny but a bit too crude for my taste at a wedding. I mentioned this when I sent back his edited speeches. He laughed it off, saying I didn't understand his family's sense of humor, which included teasing. This email exchange marked several months of back-and-forth communication, but surprisingly, nothing inappropriate happened until the very end. Throughout our conversations, there was never any flirting or escalation. We did discuss taxes, but our talks were purely scientific and psychological, making even the biggest nymphomaniac in history drier than the Sahara. The discussions about race, politics, religion, science, and sports sometimes got heated. I was called prudish for my tax opinions, but I enjoyed the discussions, confident there was no temptation on either end. All of this occurred during work hours. My husband and I had a landline for emergencies, and once we were home, our smartphones were turned off. Paul didn't even have my number to text until I emailed him with a witty remark late in the day. He asked for my number to counter what I'd sent. Many CO workers had my email, so I didn't think much of it. I genuinely believed Paul had no interest in pursuing me, as he was smitten with his fiancée at the time. However, about a month before their wedding, Paul discovered his girlfriend had been having an affair with her high school boyfriend for over a year. He was shocked and deeply hurt. Unintentionally, I became the person he vented to. I'm not sure when our conversations crossed a line, but I started feeling genuinely sorry for Paul. I despised his fiancée for what she did, and I saw nothing wrong with that. After a particularly tough night for him, he looked frazzled at school, and I could tell he'd been crying. I gave him a hug and he asked if we could talk after school. Since I had a few hours before William got home, I agreed. In hindsight, I realized what drew me into conversations with Paul was a different opinion. William and I had discussed almost every imaginable topic, and I usually knew his response most of the time. I craved surprise or verbal conflict. It was foolish, pathetic, and weak, but that led to the affair. Everything with William was perfect, and we spent every available moment together. I mentioned a coworker named Paul to William, but as nothing was happening, I didn't elaborate, and he saw no reason to pry. When William had to go out of town for 3 weeks, we FaceTimed daily, and I missed him intensely. With sudden spare time, I found myself texting Paul just to pass the time. Instead of occasional conversations, Paul and I often had dinner and drinks before going home. Oddly enough, what led to us becoming physical was me spraining my ankle and the school nurse being unavailable that week. I hurt my ankle and went to Paul, assuming he, as a coach, had numbing spray or an ace bandage. While he was tending to my ankle, I noticed he had an apparent hardness. I was surprised until I realized he could see slightly up my skirt from his position. For a moment, I found it stimulating that I was turning him on. I adjusted myself to see if a slightly better view would arouse him more. He called me out on it, and I laughed, telling him to work out his frustrations with his girlfriend. Suddenly, He kissed me, and I pushed him away. He kissed me again, and this time I didn't resist. We made out for a few minutes before I snapped out of it, hurriedly left his classroom, and sat in my own classroom in disbelief of what had just happened. I didn't intend for it to happen, and I'm sure Paul didn't either. Unsure whether to call William immediately or wait until he got home that night, I spoke to Paul after classes. He apologized, advised me not to bring conflict into my marriage, and suggested we stay friends. With William out of town and focused on work, I didn't want to add more stress. After discussing Tulsa with William that night, I decided to wait until he got home. His company faced issues causing delays and extending William's stay by 2 weeks. Paul was there for me to discuss what had happened between us. I couldn't confide in my female friends or family who all loved William. If I had known, maybe strangers on a site like this would have been the best option. Unfortunately, I vented to the last person I should have. One Friday after work, Paul and I went to a new restaurant for dinner. We sat at the bar, had a few drinks, and I explained my unease about telling my husband. Paul asked how I thought William would take the news, and I suggested he might want to call in sick the next day. I told William. He asked if I thought he would fight Paul, and I said no. However, I knew it would mean the end of Paul and I talking. Paul confessed he might not have made it through his breakup without me. I assured him I was glad to help and didn't regret it. As the realization that our friendship would end sank in, we both felt a bit depressed. We drank too much, and I ended up at Paul's apartment doing more than kissing. As soon as it was over, guilt set in. Yes, it should have set in earlier, but I knew my marriage was over. William and I had both said society allows too many second chances for those who don't deserve them. While we believe cheaters deserve a second chance, it could never be with the betrayed spouse. Things got complicated when William returned from Tulsa. I was having my period, so I knew there would be no closeness between us. Thankfully, I wouldn't have subjected my husband to diseases. Despite wanting to make love to William one last time, I couldn't allow that. I wrote a long letter confessing what I had done and planned to give it to William after a face-to-face confession. To this day, I don't know how William discovered what was going on. He may have been monitoring my online conversations with Paul from day one. I never got to ask him how he found out, and the realization that he learned about my betrayal before I could tell him caused me to fall to my knees, swearing I planned to confess. William didn't believe me, and I wouldn't have either. He had a stack of texts between Paul and me printed out. Though I didn't deny any of the accusations, that honesty came far too late. He packed a few things and left me on a Monday evening. Wednesday night, he drove to a shopping center, parked his car, and took his own life. Knowing I had destroyed our relationship tortured my soul like never before. Realizing I robbed him of a chance to find someone else to be happy with broke me. The understanding that I didn't just end my relationship with William, but also every relationship he had or would have filled me with more guilt than I could ever express. I could discuss everything that has occurred since William's passing, but many details might not interest most people. Simply put, his family and mine hold strong negative feelings toward me. My family remains disgusted by my actions, and their disappointment and shame persist. Their love for me endures, but the sense of disappointment and shame will never fade, and rightly so. The outcomes were not what I intended, but when choices lead to pain and suffering, we bear the guilt of causing that grief. I see a therapist twice a week to work through things. Through my therapist, I met someone genuinely helping me sort through my feelings. Years ago, she intentionally set a small fire as a joke, but it quickly spread, causing multiple endings of life. We've discussed various aspects of her story and mine. Things can't be the way they once were, nor should they. To keep living, I need a plan to make the remaining part of my life as meaningful as possible. So, that's essentially my story. If anyone wants to post hate messages and call me a wretched person, go right ahead. If it helps you release your rage, consider me your verbal punching bag. For those who have been cheated on, some of you may have been intentionally betrayed. But those who had a partner just as perplexed about the cheating as you were, listen to my story. It doesn't justify anything I did, quite the opposite. But if it helps you understand that you bear little responsibility for the infidelity, so be it. To unrepentant cheaters, I hope you listen to my cautionary tale and recognize your ability to destroy not just someone else but also your relationships and a significant part of yourself. I know I can't preach or judge anyone but myself. I just hope no one finds their William and loses them or sinks to the depths I did. Most importantly, I want people in great relationships to cherish and never take them for granted. Humans aren't immune to being swayed under the wrong conditions. When we love someone, we carry part of their soul with us. One betrayal makes it impossible for that person to hold that piece of you again. I had my husband's heart in my hands, and now I deserve never to hold it again, nor will he ever hold mine. This life has too much pain without hurting the ones we love. Love is too precious to risk on anything. Update: I cheated. causing my husband to commit self-destruction days after confronting me. This is intended as a final response. William likely didn't read it, and considering he's been dead a year, I doubt it was him. For those trying to psychoanalyze me, I appreciate the effort, even if it was for your own self-interest. Professionals haven't provided a good theory for why I let things happen. I feel like there should be some valid reason why I did what I did too. I just can't come up with one, and it wouldn't be a valid reason if I found one. For those thinking this is fake, I can't fathom a reason to post this other than to warn and perhaps help. It wasn't a karma grab, I've barely responded, so it wasn't for attention. And it certainly wasn't to lift my spirits because I've rightfully been slammed for my betrayal. Admitting to something horrible is not easy. Imagining it never happened doesn't help me, but you all do. I do not keep in contact with Paul and have not heard from him since before William committed self-destruction. The only things I know about him are secondhand from people I worked with. I have no interest in being with Paul or having him in my life in any way. So, those thinking I planned my vile actions to ride off into the sunset with a lacrosse coach, no. Bless you all. May you have stellar lives full of happiness, but most of all, peace. I was married to my wife for 4 years, and our marriage faced challenges due to her struggle with drinks. Even before we tied the knot, I knew she enjoyed drinking, particularly at parties. She was the kind of person who loved to indulge in drinks during social events. We first met at a club where she and her friends were celebrating a birthday. I was instantly attracted to her and approached her in the group. That night, we talked and spent the rest of the evening at the club. After meeting, we went home together because she asked if she could come with me. On that first night, we became faithful. Despite my wife thinking I was only interested in a one-night stand, I felt differently. I genuinely liked her, and our closeness deepened my feelings for her. In the following weeks, we started dating after spending time together at least twice a week for 3 months. At the time, she had just finished college and was working hourly jobs until she could land her desired job. Early on, I knew she had a drinking issue, but I didn't expect it to escalate to the point of needing rehab. After over a year of dating, we got married, officially moved in together, and unfortunately, a year later, she lost her parents and only sibling in a tragic accident. This intensified her emotional struggle, leading her to cope with the pain through excessive drinking. I thought her extreme drinking might be a temporary response to mourning, but it persisted months after the burial. She didn't recover from her family's loss, becoming a shadow of her former self. Despite my efforts to comfort her, she was in a dark mental state. Around the same time, she experienced a breakdown, adding to her emotional turmoil. She stopped working, and the responsibility of caring for both of us fell on me. On days when she wasn't drinking, she displayed aggression and anger over trivial matters. I walked in on my wife making out with a neighbor, and I was really angry. She was drunk, but he seemed sober. I kept the neighbor away and informed his wife. Yet I couldn't take any action against my wife, thinking she wasn't in the right state of mind. I was wrong because a few days later, I caught her talking to the same neighbor. When she saw me, she immediately walked away. Meanwhile, her drinking problem worsened. If I gave her money, she'd spend it all on drinks, reaching a point where she couldn't go a day without drinking. I got frustrated and tired of putting up with her, handling bills alone, and still caring for her. It became overwhelming, so I decided to get her help when there was no other option. I informed her I was taking her to rehab, and after several months of persuasion, she finally went. Seeing a significant improvement, I was relieved to be getting my wife back. As a concerned husband, I finally found peace as she broke free from her bad habits and started rebuilding her life. However, my relief didn't last. One day, while enjoying YouTube at home, my wife announced she was marrying the love of her life. I didn't take it seriously at first and just laughed it off. But when she mentioned her rehab coach, Ryan, I became attentive. According to her, Ryan was the one for her, and they were in love, planning to get married. She praised him for treating her well, talking nicely and more. I was shocked and knew she was going crazy. The Ryan she talked about was already a married man with 2 kids, making no sense. I was sure she didn't come up with the marriage idea on her own, so I confronted Ryan on her next meeting day. When I shared everything my wife said, Ryan said she was delusional. Somehow, my wife had overheard his responses. She'd been eavesdropping on our conversation. Upon hearing him, she left her hiding spot, tears streaming from her eyes. She sobbed like a baby and simultaneously showed me a video of her and Ryan, both with nothing on, in bed and in the bathroom. Ryan had recorded it during their last hotel encounter and sent it to her. She claimed Ryan vowed to divorce his wife so they could marry. When she presented the video, Ryan, angered, berated her, calling her foolish for thinking he'd leave his wife for an unstable woman. His words shattered her heart. I'd never seen my wife cry like that since losing her family. It became clear she truly loved Ryan, even planning to divorce me for him, which deeply saddened me. I was furious with Ryan for exploiting my wife, his client. To give him a taste of his own medicine, I pressed charges using the video as evidence in court. Sharing this is easy because the hurt and heartbreak almost shattered me. Despite the challenges my wife presented, I still loved her and tried to help her return to normal. Unfortunately, she cheated on me in return, planning to divorce me for her rehab coach. I felt pity for her when she discovered Ryan's deceit and nearly fell into depression. Out of compassion, I admitted her to a mental hospital, and after her admission, I initiated a divorce. Although it seemed she wasn't in her right state of mind, she was clear-headed enough to consider divorcing me. Honestly, our relationship was a significant waste of time, resources, and emotions, but I'll view it as a life lesson. Here's a piece of free advice. Some women aren't worth the sacrifices most men make. Even if you give them the universe, they might still find an excuse to cheat. Regarding Ryan, I won the court case, and he received a jail term for exploiting his mentally unstable client. The government also shut down his business. I often miss my wife, but I won't let her problems excuse breaking our marital vows and cheating on me.
Story 2.
Cheating wife got her karma when the affair partner turned out to be a scammer and stole her savings. My wife, Anna 36 female and I 39 male, have been together for 7 years, and we've been married for 5. We've had our fair share of ups and downs like any couple, but I believed our relationship was built on a strong foundation of trust and love. We both had regular jobs, and while we weren't wealthy, we were content and happy. About a year ago, Anna's interest in personal finance, let's call it a passion, took an unusual turn. She started reading books, watching YouTube videos, and even attending seminars on the subject. I was supportive of her newfound interest and believed it was a positive step toward improving our financial well-being and securing a better future for us. To be honest, I have very little knowledge about finance. Aside from basic investments like mutual funds, I have limited understanding of financial matters. Even when it comes to mutual funds, my understanding is quite surface level, and I don't invest in them apart from a mandatory tax-saving scheme. I come from a marketing background with minimal exposure to finance, and for tax-related matters and exemptions, I rely on tax consultants like many others. With the emergence of new-age finance influencers on social media, Anna also developed an interest in learning about finance. She wanted to understand the stock market and cryptocurrency. While I have some grasp of the stock market as it has been around for a long time, cryptocurrency is a realm far beyond my comprehension. Initially, I did join Anna for a few virtual seminars, but the concepts discussed were utterly alien to me. As time went on, Anna began spending an increasing amount of time with a wealthy investor she had met at one of these seminars, whom we'll refer to as Dylan. She described Dylan as a mentor who was guiding her through the intricacies of investing and wealth accumulation. The concept of mentoring has gained popularity in America, with many individuals now identifying as mentors. Furthermore, Anna eventually ceased her contributions to our household expenses, asserting that she was investing in our future and that I shouldn't complain about it. I took her at her word and continued to manage all our household bills on my own. Initially, I didn't think much of it, but as time passed, their relationship began raising significant concerns. Anna started devoting an excessive amount of time to Dylan, often late into the night. Her explanation was that, due to her day job, evenings were the only time available for pursuing her passion. When I expressed my disapproval, she became defensive and demeaned me for my limited understanding of investments. She taunted me, stating that one day she would make us wealthy and I'd regret not supporting her. I was providing her with support in every way I could. She wanted me to refrain from questioning her whereabouts, her return times, or her activities. I tried to avoid interfering as much as possible, but when she displayed obvious red flags, I had to stay vigilant. She also began changing her attire, opting for more provocative outfits, but I refrained from addressing the matter. I had never commented on her clothing choices before, so I maintained my silence this time too. However, she began neglecting our relationship, prompting me to address my concerns with her. As usual, she dismissed them, claiming that she was doing all of this for our future security and that I should be supportive rather than judgmental. Gradually, I grew distant from her because I was tired of carrying the relationship's burden on my own. I thought she would notice the change in my demeanor, but she remained preoccupied with learning the intricacies of investments, effectively forgetting about my existence. We had become nothing more than housemates and spoke only when it was absolutely necessary. Despite living under the same roof, we rarely spent time together. After her day job, she would head out to attend seminars or her mentorship class. One evening, I passed by the seminar hall where her supposed finance mentor, Dylan, conducted classes. I had a gut feeling to enter and investigate the seminar. Upon entering, I realized it was an entirely different event. I inquired with the security personnel about Dylan's company's seminars and their frequency. They informed me that such seminars were infrequent, with the last one taking place months ago. When I left the hall, I noticed several young men wearing t-shirts featuring the name of the finance influencer. I approached them and learned that they were promoting enrollment in the finance masterclass for everyone. I collected all the relevant information. The influencer himself conducted the seminars every 2 to 3 months, whereas the mentorship classes were led by mentors like Dylan in cafes. They also clarified that it was not a daily class but a weekly one, taking place from 7 to 9 p.m. Anna consistently returned home after midnight. I obtained the cafe's details and left. The following day, I asked Anna if she had the class that day. She replied curtly, "I have classes every day." I didn't say anything. Based on the information I had gathered, the class only met on Saturdays and that day was a Thursday. In the evening, after finishing my work, I dropped by the cafe and witnessed her sitting intimately close to Dylan, with his hands on her waist and his lips on her cheek. They whispered into each other's ears, and my heart sank as I observed them exchanging flirtatious glances. I remained at a distance, allowing myself time to process what I was witnessing. I attempted to capture video clips because I anticipated that she might downplay the situation. I stayed there until they engaged in more intimate activities. He was playfully teasing her, even licking her ears and engaging in other inappropriate behavior. I recorded everything. When they were on the verge of kissing, I approached and took a seat at their table, sitting opposite them. Anna froze while Dylan appeared confused. I introduced myself as her soon-to-be ex-husband, and he chuckled. Anna offered to explain, and I encouraged her to do so. She claimed it was a one-on-one mentoring session, to which I sarcastically replied that he was certainly providing hands-on mentoring. Dylan left the table, laughing off the situation. His demeanor resembled that of a player. I directly asked Anna if she had slept with Dylan, and she admitted that they had, but she argued it was part of an investment deal. I couldn't comprehend what kind of deal that was. She tried to rationalize it by asserting that it was all related to her personal finance education. She stated that Dylan had assured her that she would earn significant money after completing the classes and fulfilling his requests. I questioned what he had asked of her, specifically if it involved sleeping with him. She responded with a yes. I sensed that she was attempting to save face, so I urged her to provide any random excuses instead. I played along for a while, inquiring if she had done it against her will. She clarified that it was consensual. I accused her of deriving pleasure from it, and she countered that she hadn't, but had only done it to secure our future. I lost my temper and shouted at her, demanding to know who gave her the authority to secure our future. I informed her that she need not concern herself with mine, as I was perfectly capable of managing it. My outburst drew the attention of nearby patrons, causing them to stare at us. I stood up and left the cafe, and she followed me outside, attempting to grasp my arm. I shrugged her off and told her she could continue her involvement with her mentor and was not welcome in my home. I returned home feeling devastated. My trust in her was utterly destroyed, and it was hard to accept that she had concealed her infidelity behind the guise of learning personal finance. A few minutes later, Anna returned. She asserted that her involvement with the other person was not for pleasure but rather a means to acquire financial knowledge. I asked her to leave the house, but she pleaded with me, insisting that it wasn't infidelity. She claimed there were no romantic feelings involved with Dylan, and it was simply a business transaction. I was baffled by the type of business she was engaged in. I informed her that there was no need to engage intimately with her mentor to learn about personal finance. She could gain financial knowledge without such actions. She grew angry and asserted that she would prove me wrong, entering a mode of wanting to demonstrate her earning potential. She declared her intent to venture into influencer marketing and criticized my lack of understanding regarding the significance of early-age investing. She predicted that I would retire with minimal savings, relying on state pension, while she would become a billionaire and I would regret my decision. I told her she was free to pursue her ambitions, but not while being with me. She packed her belongings and left. 2 days later, on a Saturday, she returned. I was reclining on the couch, engaged in some online activity. She addressed me, stating, "I'm not here to apologize or beg. I've come to collect my remaining possessions." I remained silent. She gathered her belongings and drove away. Her actions showed a complete lack of remorse for what had occurred, prioritizing her affairs over our relationship. I've been in discussions with my attorney to initiate the divorce process. I hope it proceeds smoothly without unnecessary complications. Since we don't have significant assets to dispute, it should be a relatively straightforward process, but we'll see. I'll provide updates once it's all concluded. Now, I'd like to offer a brief update regarding my divorce. There haven't been many noteworthy developments aside from the divorce proceedings, so this will be a concise update. Many people had commented that Anna's so-called quest to learn personal finance didn't seem legitimate. It appeared more like a scam than a genuine investment. While I may not be well-versed in finance, one thing is clear: when someone promises quick and substantial returns, it's often a sign of something amiss. Earning money genuinely is a challenging endeavor that doesn't yield instant results. Nonetheless, I've put that chapter behind me. My divorce was finalized last week, and it went relatively smoothly. As I mentioned earlier, there were no significant assets over which we needed to dispute. The house we lived in was a rented condo. In terms of alimony, our incomes were quite similar. Moreover, since she was the one who cheated, I wasn't obligated to pay any alimony. We closed the joint account and divided the money between us. Given that we don't have any children, there was no need for child support. I'm relieved we didn't have children. It would have complicated the situation significantly. I now understand why many Americans hesitate to have children due to the uncertainty it can bring. Nevertheless, it's not as straightforward as it may seem. I'm still struggling to move on from her infidelity. She's been telling everyone that I'll come crawling back to her, seeking reconciliation when she becomes wealthy after mastering personal finance strategies. To that, I simply say, good luck. She's been spreading the word that our divorce resulted from my insecurity about her progress, painting me as controlling and jealous, among other things. I endured those comments with a smile as much as I could, and then I showed everyone the video I had recorded of her being affectionate with Dylan. Her face turned red after that, and common friends quickly reconsidered their loyalties. The last I heard, she was residing with her mother during the divorce proceedings. She shows no remorse for the damage she's caused. I'm uncertain whether she's genuinely studying personal finance and investing, or if it was merely an excuse to engage in an affair with Dylan. If she succeeds in getting her finances in order, good for her. I have no interest in wealth obtained through infidelity. By the way, I recently started watching numerous videos on investing. While I might be jumping to conclusions, I think there are plenty of free online resources that provide sufficient information for beginners. I strongly doubt that having a mentor is necessary for this. Right now, I'm striving to distance myself from conversations involving her. They were taking a toll on my mental well-being. I've reignited my hobby of painting to keep myself occupied. I've also joined a fitness club to shed some extra pounds, focusing on healthy eating and reducing my alcohol intake. I had been drinking excessively during the pre-divorce period and gained a significant amount of weight. Hello everyone, I have an intriguing update to share. First and foremost, I want to express my gratitude for all the support and the valuable links you provided about investment knowledge. It was incredibly helpful. As many of you pointed out, it wasn't a finance class, it was indeed a scam. So true. The highlight of this update is that Anna fell victim to a scam. Remember the finance influencer who was conducting those seminars? It turns out he was a fraudster. He swindled people out of their hard-earned money, promising them substantial returns. Anna had also invested around 30% of her income in that scheme, with hopes of substantial gains. Not only that, I heard she even sold some of her valuable assets, like her family heirloom diamond ring and her platinum necklace, to go all in on this investment endeavor. It appears that everything was nothing but a deception. The influencer is now on the lam while his associates, including Dylan, have been apprehended, and an investigation is underway. Once this news surfaced, Anna became the target of ridicule from all the people she had been bragging to about her impending wealth. She had been flaunting her newfound knowledge to everyone and belittling those with limited investment expertise. In the aftermath of this revelation, all the individuals whom Anna had mocked are now turning the tables on her and poking fun at her. It's only natural. One of our mutual friends informed me that she has blocked most of the people who were making fun of her. She also deactivated her social media accounts because people were tagging her in posts related to that finance influencer she had been endorsing. So it's no surprise that people are doing this to her. It's a lesson in not counting your chickens before they hatch, which is precisely what she had been doing all this time. As for me, I've made significant progress. I've shed those extra pounds. Currently, I'm focused on muscle training, and I'm enjoying it. As I mentioned earlier, I've rekindled my passion for painting, and it's been a very fulfilling experience. I haven't rushed into dating just yet. It's not about getting over the past, I'm simply not ready for it. Things took a highly dramatic turn last month, only a week after my previous update. I had an unexpected visitor. It was Anna, and she appeared utterly despondent. She explained that she had fallen victim to a scam. Dylan and his fraudulent influencer boss had defrauded hundreds of people and absconded to a different country with their money. I asked her about Dylan's supposed arrest based on the last update. She informed me that no, Dylan and a few other so-called mentors were close associates of the influencer, and they managed to escape at the right moment. The remaining team members were apprehended in the absence of the main culprits. I inquired whether she had come to me because Dylan had fled. She insisted it wasn't the reason. She claimed she still loved me and wanted to sit and talk. I reminded her that we were already divorced, rendering any conversation pointless. Her response was, "I've already been punished by karma. I've lost a significant amount of money in all respect. People are ridiculing me, making fun of me. You emerged victorious from this situation. What more could you want?" What more could I want? I wanted peace. I had wanted her out of my life, and in that moment, I wanted her out of my house. That was what I wanted. She continued by saying, "Now that you know there was nothing between me and Dylan, we can get back together. If there were anything, he would have taken me with him, right?" I replied with a firm, "No." I explained that he wouldn't have taken her because he had numerous women like her, sleeping with him to learn some dubious money-making tricks. After all, he couldn't take all his promiscuous partners with him, could he? She implored me to consider reconciliation, asserting that she had not been emotionally involved with Dylan. She admitted to being drawn to the idea of getting rich quickly. I made it clear that reconciliation was not an option. I had moved on considerably by that point, so her pleas had no impact on me. If she had begged for forgiveness when her affair was exposed, I might have contemplated it. I can't be sure, however, after witnessing her true character. I'm no fool to trust her again. She returned to me only after losing everything. During the divorce proceedings, she had shown no remorse, and now she came to me. Unbelievable. I informed her that I had to leave for my fitness class and that she needed to go. She commented that I looked much younger and fitter and inquired if I was dating someone. I told her it was none of her business. She began crying, accusing me of being rude. I retorted that she should be grateful for my civility and for hearing her out after what she had done to me. I used to love her deeply, but I had moved beyond that emotion. She left when I became cold towards her pleas. A few days later, her mother called me and requested a meeting. I asked for the reason, and she said it was something urgent and important, inappropriate for a phone conversation. I met her the next day for coffee. She apologized on behalf of Anna. I embraced her and assured her that it wasn't her fault, so she didn't need to apologize. She had always been kind to me. In contrast to Anna, she refrained from speaking ill of me during the divorce proceedings. She asked if I would consider reconciling with Anna because she deeply regretted her actions. She was constantly crying and falling into depression. She feared that Anna might end herself due to her loss of savings, part of her monthly salary, and some valuable jewelry pieces. As mentioned in previous updates, I was unaware that Anna had lost her savings as well. Anna was always a saver, and I was certain she had at least $100,000 saved up. Losing such a substantial amount of money could lead anyone to mental distress. I inquired how our reconciliation would help her cope with the depression resulting from the financial loss. She argued that Anna genuinely loved me, and even in her dire circumstances, she could at least find happiness in having me in her life. I'll admit I felt some sympathy for Anna. I briefly wavered towards considering reconciliation, but it was short-lived. I quickly reverted to my decision of not taking her back. I informed her that I couldn't do it. I no longer loved her. It led to another round of crying and pleading to help her daughter overcome her depression. I remained resolute in my decision and advised her to take Anna to therapy. She required counseling more than a husband. My ex-mother-in-law was disappointed that I declined her request but understood my perspective. Another factor that could have further upset Anna was my investment journey. I started following genuine finance YouTubers who significantly aided my comprehension of personal finance and investing at macroeconomic and fundamental levels. This knowledge played a crucial role in building my investment portfolio. Surprisingly, I'm already sitting on a substantial profit. Currently, I've ventured into the stock and bond market. Crypto trading still remains beyond my grasp, and I prefer not to explore unfamiliar territory. I'm not rushing things, I'm taking it one step at a time. Learning about the stock market has reaffirmed my belief that making money is not something that happens overnight. It requires patience as well as courage. I'm hoping to emerge from this experience stronger. As for dating, I believe I'm still not ready for it. Alright, that was a fun story. Now, let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned, and let's dive in. Story 2. I'm a 40-year-old woman, and my parents, my father aged 63 and my mother aged 60, have been married for 43 years. I have 6 siblings, a 42-year-old sister, a 38-year-old sister, a 34-year-old sister, and 3 brothers aged 20, 20, and 18. I've been with my husband, a 39-year-old man, since we were 15. I became pregnant at 17 and we moved in with my parents. I gave birth to my now 22-year-old daughter and we got married at 18. Shortly after our wedding, my dad's father passed away and left his ranch-style house to my father. My grandparents built a house next door to my parents when they retired. My parents decided to let us live in this house and informed us that it would be my inheritance. My husband and I had no issues with this arrangement, and we went on to have 3 more children, 2 boys aged 20 and 14, a girl aged 5, and I'm currently 7 months pregnant with my last child, a boy due in April. I believed I had a strong marriage. We were intimate more than twice a week, went on regular date nights, exchanged gifts, and rarely had fights. However, my world came crashing down on New Year's Eve when I returned early from a girls' trip with some friends. I walked into my bedroom and found my mother having intercourse with my husband. My mother yelled at me to leave their bedroom, which shook me up even more. Unfortunately, my eldest daughter was also home, getting ready for a party in her bedroom across the house. She ran out and saw my nearly naked mother running out of our house into hers, slamming the door. My daughter was devastated and went to my sister's house. I asked her not to say anything until I had spoken with my husband. I confronted him, and he confessed that my mother had seduced him when we were 18 and living in their house. They had been having unprotected sex at least once a month for longer than we were married. I calculated the timeline and was horrified, as it meant my twin brothers and youngest brother could be fathered by my husband. I immediately called my dad and asked him to come to my house without my mom. My husband confessed in front of my dad, who was devastated since he and my mom were high school sweethearts. My mother's screams were audible from her house as she was confronted. I then confided in my older sister, and we decided to host a party for the whole extended family, inviting my ex's family as well. At the party, I had my 22-year-old daughter take all the kids to the basement to watch a movie, leaving only the adult children and siblings. I proceeded to explain exactly what had been happening. The majority of my family is supportive of me, except for my 3 youngest siblings, my 38-year-old sister, and my ex's entire family. They all label me as an a-hole for making this matter public. News spread, and my mom's best friend, who holds a leadership position in my childhood church, called me to confirm the story. Consequently, my mom was removed from her role as the children's pastor at the church, and she claims I've essentially destroyed her reputation and life. My dad has asked her to leave, and she is currently residing with my 38-year-old sister. Furthermore, my dad has insisted on a DNA test for the 3 youngest boys before he will consider any reconciliation with my mother. It turns out that the twins are indeed my husband's biological children. In response, I've kicked my husband out, and he is now living with his parents. My father and I are in discussions about my potential move into his much larger house, while he sells my grandfather's house and provides me with the money to purchase a new house elsewhere to create a fresh start without the lingering memories. My husband is outraged and furious because I've exposed that he's actually going to be a father of 7 children instead of 5, and I will be entitled to half of his business. My husband started his HVAC company a few years ago, and for the first 5 years, I played a significant role in establishing it, managing the office entirely, and temporarily stepping back from my teaching career to help him get it off the ground. In our state, all marital assets, including businesses, are divided equally. Since the house was still under my father's name, my husband will receive no money from its sale, and neither will my mother, as inherited assets are not subject to division in divorce. My mother is also unlikely to receive any alimony, as our state doesn't follow a no-fault divorce system. Over a month has passed, and I'm still deeply bitter and angry with my mother, particularly because of her hypocrisy in calling me names and shaming my family when she's engaged in far worse behavior. I also have strong feelings of resentment toward my ex, as he was intimately involved with both my mother and me, sometimes coming to our bed minutes later. He impregnated my mother less than a week after I became pregnant, and while I initially thought it was cute and fun to share a pregnancy experience with my mom, she was carrying my children's half-siblings. This situation has shattered my trust in men and their ability to remain faithful. I've already secured a proficient lawyer from the firm that handled our financial matters, with support from my dad in covering the costs. 2 of my twin brothers, 1 of my sisters, and my entire ex's family have cut off contact with me and my minor children. Consequently, my children have essentially lost all of their grandparents except for my dad, 2 uncles, and an aunt on my side, and my husband's 3 brothers due to this unfortunate situation. I've developed ulcers and digestive problems, so I'm planning to see a doctor soon. Additionally, I've been attending therapy sessions since the first week of January. I've also extended the offer of family therapy to my 2 adult children, but they are currently undergoing individual therapy. My 14-year-old daughter is aware of our divorce and the reasons behind it. She's understandably angry with her dad, which makes it difficult for me to send her to his house on weekends. While I believe she's old enough to have a say in this matter, I don't want to harm her relationship with her father. I've told all my children that it's okay to love their dad, even if he hurt me. However, my two eldest children have completely cut off contact with him. I won't reveal the true reasons for the divorce to my younger two children until they reach their teenage years, and everyone has agreed not to disclose anything until they are old enough to comprehend. Regarding how I remained oblivious to the ongoing affair, my husband admitted to me that they had sex at my mom's church office, in their cars, at a motel, and when we established the business. They began regularly doing it in his office. Once I resumed my teaching career, they also did it in our homes when my father was away on business trips or when I was out of town. The most distressing part for me is the sheer coincidence of coming home a day early from a trip due to pregnancy discomfort, and this is how I discovered the affair. Knowing that they would have continued this affair if I hadn't caught them is what continues to upset me. I find it hard to get past the fact that my children's grandmother and father showed so little concern for the impact on our families. What's particularly challenging for me is the realization that my own mother could betray me and continue this behavior for years without caring about the consequences. When it all unraveled in her face, my husband confirmed during one of our mediated conversations that the affair began when I apparently upset him. Instead of talking to me, he vented to my mom when they were alone. She consoled him, and they became intimate. He enjoyed it and pursued her from that point on. He even mentioned he would have divorced me but knew he'd lose her and that she was better in bed than me, so he stuck with me. He told me that I was just a temporary placeholder. Among all the betrayals and low blows, this statement is what keeps me awake at night. Update: I made extensive efforts to pursue a mediated divorce, but my ex informed me through his legal representatives yesterday that he doubts the paternity of the baby I'm currently carrying. He insists on a DNA test as soon as the baby is born because he refuses to support a child he believes is not his own. Furthermore, he alleges that I had multiple affairs throughout our marriage and that I was aware of his ongoing affair, which he claims I used as an excuse to engage in my own infidelity. None of these allegations are true, but part of me almost wishes they were, as it would simplify the divorce process. My attorney essentially cautioned me to prepare for a protracted, contentious divorce characterized by various ruthless tactics on my ex's part, making an already difficult situation even more painful. I will address some of the questions raised here and in the previous post. My twin brothers strongly resemble my maternal side of the family, particularly my uncle and grandfather. They do not bear a strong resemblance to my dad, but interestingly, they don't resemble my husband much either. On the other hand, my son clearly takes after my soon-to-be ex and is the only child who visibly appears to be his, although my 14-year-old daughter has inherited his nose and jaw shape. While I was undoubtedly furious on the day everything unraveled, my father talked me down from my initial rage and reminded me to consider the well-being of my baby and my other children before taking any actions that could deprive them of both their parents. It was this realization that spared them in the days that followed. I still felt a lingering anger, which ultimately led to the revenge party. Looking back, I wish I had privately informed my brothers about my egg donor's infidelity. As for my 38-year-old sister's alliance with my mother, I'm not entirely certain of her reasons. We haven't gotten along with each other or my other sisters since high school, but I'm not overly concerned about her position in this matter. My twin brothers are understandably upset that I disclosed the news publicly. According to my dad, they are currently undergoing therapy, and my dad has advised me to give them time, suggesting that they may simply be directing their anger at me, the messenger. While I didn't explicitly tell them that my ex might be their father, they can do the math and have deduced that they're the same age as my son, and he's younger than the length of the affair. My dad had a candid conversation with them, explaining that the DNA test was intended to prove infidelity and not to disown them. To him, they are his sons, regardless of whose sperm fertilized the egg. I don't believe that my egg donor and my soon-to-be ex waited until he turned 18 to have sex. But I'm leaving my dad to address that issue and manage it in the context of their divorce proceedings. I do have contingency plans in place in case they decide to move in together, but my attorney doesn't believe my ex is foolish enough to do so given the escalating hostility of the divorce proceedings. I neglected to mention earlier that my husband is 4 months younger than me. My birthday falls in December, and his is in April. He will be turning 40 soon. We were in the same graduating class from kindergarten through high school, so he's not a full year younger than me, as some have speculated. At this point, I am focusing on my pregnancy, my kids, and moving forward. I may provide an update after the divorce is finalized, but I want to express my gratitude to everyone for their support and advice. Update: I had a telephone conversation with my aunt today, who happens to be my egg donor's sister. She shared with me that there's a history of infidelity within our family, particularly on their side. My grandmother had engaged in infidelity for a significant period, but she and my grandfather eventually reconciled. My aunt herself had experienced multiple emotional affairs but remained married to my uncle. She made an attempt to attribute my mother's affair to genetics. I found her explanation so absurd that I couldn't help but burst into laughter. As a result of my reaction, my aunt is now upset with me for not taking my egg donor's side and considering her justifications for cheating. Both my dad and my lawyer have advised me to listen to her perspective, so I'm still contemplating whether to do so, possibly right before our meeting in early March to establish custody. Edit: I should note that I asked my aunt whether my mother had inherited the infidelity gene, which child she might have passed it on to, and how my grandmother managed to pass it on to both her daughters. In hindsight, that's likely why she's upset. To be honest, I've lost all sympathy for cheaters after this update. In previous updates, my ex accused me of infidelity and requested a DNA test for our unborn son. My aunt revealed that infidelity runs in our egg donor's family and tried to argue that it's genetic and hereditary. My dad and I were encouraged by our lawyers to meet with my egg donor for evidence and closure. This update delves into the answers we received from her regarding her choices. I had a meeting last evening with my egg donor, dad, and our lawyers. Essentially, my egg donor confessed that she knew her actions were wrong but enjoyed the attention, found the sex exciting, and liked the thrill of it. She continued her affair with my dad because she valued their financial stability and carefree life, wanting to remain married. She admitted that she intentionally slept with him after each encounter with my ex to see if she could pass off any potential child as my dad's. She also acknowledged taking pleasure in the knowledge that my ex enjoyed sex with her more than with me. She then announced that she's moving in with my ex to his new place and invited the boys to live with them. The twins visited once since the affair was exposed and informed her that they don't like my ex and won't treat him as their father. She believes they'll eventually come around once she's married to my ex, and then she'll have her family back. I couldn't help but laugh and told her she was delusional, needing psychiatric help. I also informed her that I would be obtaining a restraining order to prevent her from having any access to my minor children. She called me a jealous and ungrateful person, saying I should be thankful that she didn't terminate me and let me live. She claimed I should appreciate that they didn't kick me out when I became pregnant. She even had the audacity to suggest I should be grateful she kept my husband content when I couldn't, preventing him from divorcing me and leaving me as a broken, damaged single mother. She then told my dad that she experienced postpartum depression after my birth and he ignored her, leaving her to feel alone, which she believed justified her hatred for me and her affairs. She admitted to having multiple affairs from 6 months after my birth until New Year's Eve, and stated she would still be doing it if I hadn't exposed everything. So my 38-year-old sister and 34-year-old sister may not be my dad's children either. My dad is even more devastated and angry, but we had our lawyers present, and we recorded her confession. My dad has already reached out to my siblings, but unsurprisingly, my 38-year-old sister already knew it was a possibility because my mom informed her about both affairs when the twins were born. And she knew they might not be my dad's children but kept it from us. My dad is more heartbroken about this than losing his relationship with my mom. I'm not sure their relationship will ever recover. I genuinely have no idea what's wrong with my 38-year-old sister. My 34-year-old sister has declined a paternity test and affirmed that our dad will always be her father. My dad is perfectly fine with that decision. I've informed my ex, through my lawyer, that I intend to file an order of protection tomorrow, ensuring my kids won't have to go to my ex's house if my mother is present. Neither of them has made any efforts to secure new housing, so it seems like she might be planning to move into my ex-in-law's house. I genuinely don't want my kids exposed to that chaotic situation. He has yet to respond, but honestly, I'm not concerned about his wishes. P.S. My family and our lawyers are aware of the social media posts, but my ex and egg donor face very unfavorable odds in the divorce proceedings. I'm being a bit petty and reveling in their discomfort at being exposed, so I'm leaving the posts up. They can dwell in their predicament and know that not only does our local community view them negatively, but so does the entire world. Additionally, I've obtained permission from my younger sister to share what transpired last night. I'm not particularly concerned about my 38-year-old sister's opinion. Update: I gave birth to my son in early April. And I'm relieved to say that he's healthy and I didn't encounter any health complications during the process. By the end of March, I succeeded in obtaining temporary full physical and legal custody of my children. My 14-year-old daughter approached me with a request for family therapy involving her and her dad. Initially, I was opposed to the idea, putting up resistance. However, I eventually decided to go along with it for the sake of my daughter. recognizing her need to process everything and hopefully move forward. During the therapy sessions, I gained significant insights into the relationship between my ex and my egg donor, thanks to the assignments the therapist provided. My ex disclosed further details which I believe to be true. My mom had actually attempted to seduce him, well before we were of legal age. According to my ex's recollection, this happened when my egg donor assumed leadership of the youth group. I was 15, and he was just a few months shy of turning 15 at the time. The grooming process began then, with her offering private counseling because he supposedly needed it. They shared a kiss at some point when he was still 14, and that was the extent of their physical interaction, meaning they engaged in making out during these secretive sessions until he turned 18. It was right around the time of their first kid that my mom convinced him to ask me out and date me so that they could continue seeing each other without arousing suspicion. Upon learning this, I experienced a mix of emotions, devastation, realizing that my entire relationship was built on a lie and my husband never truly loved me, yet also relief knowing that I had no part in their affair. The reason I find this believable is that when he asked me out, I had to seek permission from my parents to date. At that time, the rule was no one could date before the age of 16. My mom seemingly supported me, or so I thought. We began dating immediately after he turned 15, fitting the timeline. They did not engage in full intercourse until he turned 18, and I suppose that served as his birthday present from her. My 22-year-old daughter and 20-year-old son are still not communicating with him, a fact that he has come to terms with, understanding that they may never re-establish contact with him. As for the twins and me, we have managed to fully reconcile. Now, turning to my egg donor, following my last conversation with my aunt, I decided to cut off contact with both her and my grandmother. I had grown weary of my aunt's persistent attempts to guilt-trip me into communicating with my egg donor. Unfortunately, my grandma is facing her own issues, showing early signs of dementia and senility. While I can tolerate her labeling my egg donor in derogatory terms, some of her other actions and comments have only added unnecessary stress to my life. My 34-year-old and 42-year-old sisters were the ones who assisted me with the labor and delivery plan. My ex was aware of the plans, but he also knew that I preferred him not to be at the hospital until after I had given birth and was in a better state for him to meet his son. He agreed to this. On the day I went into labor, my 34-year-old sister took my 14-year-old and 5-year-old children to her place, while my 42-year-old sister stayed with me in the delivery room. Surprisingly, my 14-year-old child needed something from their school and reached out to my ex to pick it up because he was still on the official pickup list, although not anymore. He was supposed to drop it off at my sister's house. My egg donor accompanied him when he took the call. However, he declined to have her come along, as I preferred my children not to be around her. Apparently, she followed him in her car to the store and then to my sister's house, where she threw a temper tantrum on the front lawn. My ex decided to break up with her, stating that she brought too much drama and it wasn't worth it anymore. She flew into a rage, physically attacked him, and began vandalizing things in my sister's yard. The police were called, and my egg donor was arrested for domestic violence. Consequently, my ex, my sister, and I all obtained orders of protection against her due to her instability and the situation. My ex relocated to an apartment near his HVAC company. My 14-year-old daughter has chosen not to forgive him and expressed that she doesn't want to be around him at the moment. Thus, only the 5-year-old visits my ex. He comes to my dad's house and spends time with her one weeknight and one weekend evening while I take my other kids and twin brothers out for dinner. We've established contact through a custody app and plan to revisit the custody arrangements in June. I intend to pursue full legal and physical custody until my ex can demonstrate that he has undergone the necessary therapy and treatment. I still harbor strong negative feelings toward my ex for what he put me through from the time I was 15 until recently. However, my disdain for my egg donor is even more profound for the harm she inflicted on all of us. Despite my emotions, I do have some sympathy for my ex, and I genuinely want him to recover for the sake of my younger children. Regarding the other divorce proceedings, my ex has agreed to a mediated uncontested divorce, and I'll be receiving half of everything, including the business. I've decided to sell my shares to one of my ex's employees who wishes to become a partner. My ex is content with this arrangement, and I'm eager to sever all ties with him. My dad successfully sold my old house without even listing it on the market because our realtor knew a family looking for a home. Meanwhile, I've started searching for houses about 45 minutes away from my dad's location. As for the egg donor, she has gone into hiding after the twins made it clear that they would never live with her and wanted nothing to do with her. Particularly after her arrest, she began guilt-tripping and blaming them. She is currently contesting the divorce from my dad and only communicating with him through her attorney. Concerning my 38-year-old sister, she had a reality check during this whole ordeal when my mother called her and scolded her for not helping her get out of jail during a 45-minute conversation. Apparently, my sister has been experiencing fertility problems, which I was unaware of because we don't communicate, leading to stress, anxiety, and a decline in her self-esteem. This vulnerability made her susceptible to manipulation by our egg donor, who boosted her self-esteem with positive attention. However, when my sister declined to bail her out due to saving money for another round of IVF with her partner, she recognized the manipulation and reached out to me. We have slowly started talking again, and she supports me in this situation. Additionally, she has resumed communication with my dad, which I'm glad about for his sake, as it allows them to reconnect. Welcoming my son, by the way, we conducted the DNA test a few weeks before his birth, confirming that he is indeed my ex's child, has brought immense joy and delight into my life. With my other kids, and the support of my dad and siblings, I've been able to navigate through this challenging time, and I believe they will continue to help me. I hold hope that at some point I can address my ex without the burden of anger and bitterness, considering the trauma he endured due to my egg donor's actions. I believe I'll be fine. As I mentioned before, this will be my final update on this matter, so I want to express my gratitude for all the kindness, love, and support.
Story 3.
Kim and I first met roughly 7 years ago and quickly formed a close friendship. Both of us were raised in the Midwest, where our devout Christian beliefs placed God above all else, even family. Our Sundays were filled with church visits and hopeful discussions about our future plans. I pursued a successful career as an engineer with promising prospects, while Kim thrived in her role selling accounting software for a prominent technology firm based in Atlanta. Before our marriage, my parents generously gifted me a 3-bedroom house upon my college graduation. With their wealth, they aimed to share their success while still alive, unlike many who wait until after pass away. Mom and Dad found joy in giving during their lifetime. Kim and I exchanged vows a little over 5 years ago, and since then, we've been on an endless honeymoon. Our lovemaking life was vibrant, with passionate encounters at least 4 nights a week. We were viewed as soulmates, much to the amusement of our friends who were envious of our closeness. Our joy multiplied when we welcomed 2 beautiful blonde twin girls into our lives. After their arrival, our focus shifted entirely to raising them in a nurturing and loving environment. Our lifestyle might be deemed dull by some. We typically dined at home most evenings, reserving Friday and Saturday nights for outings and Sundays for church. Unlike peers our age, we weren't drawn to socializing or keeping up with fashion trends. Kim opted for conservative attire both at work and home, reserving our lovemaking moments exclusively for our bedroom built on trust and transparency, forming a sturdy foundation for our marriage. Kim, naturally affectionate, expressed her love through tender gestures of touch, kisses, and hugs, all of which I adored. We relished in sharing our emotions and cherished each other deeply. While raising twins presented its challenges, I cherished every moment spent with them. Though the twins posed some stress for Kim, I gladly supported her through any difficulties. Our partnership was built on effective communication, ensuring we dealt with issues promptly. Life with Kim and our twin girls was going smoothly. However, a week before the annual exhibition, Kim received notice that she had to participate due to others falling ill with the virus. Despite her attempts to decline, she had no choice but to comply due to the urgency of the situation. She expressed her regret, saying she was sorry to leave us for 3 days and that she had tried to avoid it by contacting her boss. She mentioned how much she hated being away from us. I reassured her that we would manage fine without her for a few days and that we would miss her dearly. I helped her pack and accompanied her to the limo arranged by the company for her airport journey. Our marriage had always been solid, built on trust and transparency. There had never been any indication of her behaving in a way that wasn't loving or faithful. We shared everything openly and worked together as a team, especially when it came to our children. On the second night of the exhibition, I received a text from Greg, a colleague and friend who was at a cybersecurity event in Atlanta. He mentioned Kim being at the exhibition and asked if I was supposed to be at the security conference. He seemed curious about the trade show Kim was attending, and I confirmed it was in Atlanta, but wasn't sure of the exact name. Greg's messages left me wondering what he was trying to imply. His message contained 2 photos and a video. I sat paralyzed with dread. The first photo depicted my wife in an unfamiliar outfit, the shortest dress I'd ever seen her wear, accentuating her ample chest with a plunging neckline. She wore pumps I didn't recognize, her hair and makeup flawless, radiating stunning allure. Never had she appeared so alluring to me. Initially, upon seeing the first photo, I convinced myself it must be someone resembling Kim, as it seemed implausible it could be her. I chuckled inwardly, musing, I wish Kim would dress like that one day. But the amusement faded when the subsequent photo emerged, a close-up of her closely seated next to Jonathan, one of her bosses. I sat there, stunned, motionless, not even blinking, until the next photo materialized, a close-up of her smiling and gazing into Jonathan's eyes. My heart sank at the sight. Though I attempted to rationalize, there must be a logical explanation, albeit futile. The following message contained a brief video clip showing my wife kissing Jonathan, her arms wrapped around his neck while his hand rested on her right breast. In that instant, my mind exploded. I felt as if my entire world collapsed upon me. Tears of anguish streamed down my face, my heart racing, and a wave of nausea engulfing me. A message came through. Hey, are you okay? What should I do? Can you see her right now? Yes, I'll give her a call right away to check on her. I dialed her number, hearing it ring several times before reaching voicemail. Leaving a message, I expressed our longing to speak with her and ensure she had a pleasant evening. I reached out to Greg, updating him on the call. I just tried reaching her. What happened? Greg's remorse was palpable. David, I'm sorry about this. She took her phone out of her purse, glanced at the caller ID, then returned it to her purse. I can't believe it's her. I've never seen her behave or dress like this before. Greg, it's okay. Thank you for being upfront with me. You're a true friend. I'll handle this myself. If possible, avoid confronting her. Keep me informed if anything else occurs. But don't waste time trailing her. I'll handle it from here. Are you going to be okay, buddy? No, I'm far from okay, but I know what I need to do. I'll handle it. I'm still reeling from the shock, but I'll come to terms with everything. Thanks again. Anytime. I'm here for you. Take care of yourself, Greg. Thanks once more. I poured a stronger drink and sat in the dimly lit living room, grappling with the sudden collapse of my world in under 20 minutes. I had been oblivious to any issues in our relationship. How long had this been going on? Was I truly oblivious to the signs? No, she never gave me cause for concern. In fact, over the past 6 months, our bond had grown stronger, our closeness intensified. None of it made sense, leaving me bewildered. In the following hour, Greg sent more photos and videos. A brief clip showed them dancing, his hand on her back. Another captured them kissing on the dance floor. A photo depicted a deep, private kiss on a deserted dance floor, oblivious to the music's end. I acknowledged it was over between us, yet there was much I needed to unravel and comprehend. Leveraging my analytical skills as an engineer and problem solver, I spent the ensuing days devising a plan. Kim surprised me with a call at 10 p.m. After receiving their final photo, I took a deep breath, striving to compose myself. I resolved not to reveal any inkling of awareness about her actions. Hey there, sorry I missed your earlier call. I was at a dinner meeting and couldn't talk. I miss you so much, baby. Wish I could be there with you, cuddling under the covers, showering you with kisses. I miss you too, Kim. I love you deeply, and thanks for calling. The girls are adorable, and I'll send you some photos. They're missing their mom and want you to come home. I tried to leave tomorrow, but my boss insisted I stay. Hate being away from you, darling. We'll celebrate when you're back. Finished for today? Yes, I'm preparing for bed and another long work day. Love you, baby, and I'll call you tomorrow. Good night, Kim. I love you more than words can express. And with that, I hung up, tears welling up again. What I said was genuine. I loved her more than anything and hoped this was just a terrible dream. Past midnight, I lay in bed unable to sleep. I wondered if she was truly in her hotel room and what she was up to. My question was answered by another message from Greg. It was a photo of Kim and Jonathan on a lobby sofa, sharing a kiss. His hand was beneath her short skirt, her arms wrapped around his neck. They resembled a couple in love, publicly displaying their affection. And one last thing, buddy. I'm done for today, but looks like she's busy. Let me know if you want me to stop. I can easily put an end to this. It's tough to face right now, but thanks for the photos. No need. Let her go. It's her wrongdoing, not yours. Stay out of it. Thanks again. I cried myself to sleep, knowing that the love of my life had betrayed me. Eventually, exhaustion and the comfort of our marriage vows and our daughter's sleep eased the pain and tears until I woke up the next morning. Kim sent me several affectionate messages adorned with hearts, kisses, and emojis. She professed her love, expressing how much she missed both me and the girls. She even hinted at a passionate night ahead upon her return. When she came back, she showered me with sweetness and affection, behaving as though nothing had transpired. I began to wonder if perhaps she suffered from dissociative disorder or had been unknowingly medicated. Despite my search for explanations, I realized I needed to confront the reality and prepare for her imminent return home. Our frequent conversations seemed normal, with Kim expressing her longing to reunite with us. I couldn't determine what upset me more, her infidelity or the deceit accompanying it. Feeling deceived cut as deep as witnessing her embrace with Jonathan. Upon learning of my wife's betrayal through Greg's messages, I took decisive action. Leveraging my tech expertise, I discreetly installed tracking software on her phone, initially intended for locating misplaced devices. Opting for the latest software available, I even walked Kim through its setup. This software also featured a voice recorder capable of capturing calls, texts, and emails with automatic cloud uploads if activated. Let me clarify, my intention wasn't to spy on her, but circumstances warranted caution. Before this incident, I never considered invading her privacy. However, following recent events, my trust had been shattered irreparably. My priority was safeguarding our daughters and salvaging our marriage, if feasible. Thankfully, caring for the twins kept me occupied, offering respite from thoughts of our disintegrating relationship. Whether it was preparing breakfast, tidying up after them, or engaging in doll play, these moments were precious amidst the turmoil. Trust me, tending to 3-year-old twins is no small feat. It was 2 p.m., and I finally managed to get the girls to settle down for their afternoon nap. After tidying up the house and showering, I sat at the table to catch up. Kim had sent me 6 more affectionate messages, mentioning she would call at 5 p.m. once her day wrapped up. After reading them, I accessed the cloud from my laptop, logged into her account, and reviewed everything recorded since activating the spying software. I sat in shock as I read the messages exchanged with Jonathan. Here are a few excerpts. "You were incredible last night, baby. Can't wait for tonight." "Thanks, kitten. I enjoyed it too. Can we head to my room after work before dinner?" "Certainly, but I need to call my husband first. I should be ready by 5:15. "Does your husband suspect anything?" "Of course not. He thinks I love him, and I'll keep it that way. We've kept it a secret for over 6 months, and he's clueless. Don't worry." My anger became overwhelming, prompting me to stop reading. "Kitty. Did he call her kitten? That's my term for her during closeness. Did she give him that too? Was I truly that oblivious? What kind of fool was I?" I dropped my laptop on a chair and screamed, grabbing a lamp from the table and hurling it forcefully into the wall, shattering it into pieces. The rage I had managed to control now consumed me. As I was about to break another lamp, I heard the girls crying. Their cries snapped me back to reality, and I regained control. I rushed into the bedroom, holding both girls in my arms until they calmed down. After cleaning up the glass from my outburst, I let them play in the living room while I sat with another strong drink, reflecting on my actions. In my view, the marriage was beyond repair, and it was time to take action. I lacked the strength to listen to their conversations or review any more files, so I allowed them to accumulate in the cloud. I decided to play along with Kim, just as she had deceived me. My immediate plan was to act like a loving husband while strategizing my next steps. I intended to contact a divorce lawyer, hire a private investigator, and find a way to secure custody of the girls. Their well-being was my top priority, and the only thing that truly mattered to me. "Hey, sweetheart, how are the girls holding up? They're missing their mommy." "Oh my goodness, they're on my mind all day, every day. And of course, you too. I can't wait to wrap my arms around you. When I get back, I'm going to give you the warmest kiss you've ever had." I played along, saying, "Oh, darling, I think of you constantly, longing to embrace my loving, beautiful wife. Soon, my love, we'll be reunited." Somehow I kept it together, and our call lasted precisely 15 minutes. At 5:15, she bid farewell, saying, "I love you, David. I have to go catch the bus back to the hotel. I'll message you later. I love you." Another effortlessly delivered lie. She had quite the talent for it. "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you can imagine." The pain of her deception has now transformed into contempt, anger, and a desire for revenge. I was determined to expose her lies and hold her accountable. I had loved her wholeheartedly, making this betrayal all the more difficult to bear. I greeted her at the airport, and she embraced and kissed me just as she had promised. Either she was an exceptional actress, or she genuinely cared for me deeply. Was her involvement with Jonathan merely physical? Her behavior continued to baffle me. She spent an hour with the girls, relishing their company. That night, she was exceptionally affectionate in bed, repeatedly expressing how much she missed me and the girls, and lamenting her prolonged absence. She spoke of wanting nothing more than to be with me, holding each other in bed. She was tender, loving, and entirely different from the woman I saw at the fair. I reciprocated her affection and cherished our time together. It felt genuine, and I yearned for it to be authentic because being with her was all I desired. Yet, deep down, I knew it would soon come to an end. I kept my newfound knowledge hidden, showering her with love and fulfilling her every night. To outsiders, our relationship seemed idyllic, sparking envy in others. This charade persisted for 3 months, during which I searched for any signs of infidelity but found none. She arrived home from work at her usual time every evening. No unusual phone calls or text messages. I even dared to hope that it was all a mistake and that things would resolve themselves. Mr. Bryce, a private investigator, called me and arranged to meet the next day. I drove downtown to their office and sat in their conference room. "Good afternoon, David. Good to see you again." "Likewise, Mr. Bryce." "David, I wish I had better news, but unfortunately I have to deliver some bad news. Are you prepared to review our findings?" I sighed and nodded in agreement. While I hoped for the best, deep down, I knew what was happening between Kim and Jonathan. Mr. Bryce placed a thick leather 3-ring binder in front of me. It contained sections labeled text messages, voice transcripts, video calls, phone call transcripts, and photos. "Mr. Bryce, before we delve into this, I'm perplexed because I've been closely monitoring her activities and schedule for the past 3 months, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She's been the ideal wife and partner, and none of this makes sense." Let me guide you through this and see if anything becomes clearer. I refrained from accessing cloud files because I couldn't bear the thought of reading the texts, hoping for a positive outcome. Unfortunately, that hope was dashed. There were over 75 pages of text messages, 25 pages of emails, and 75 pages of time-stamped photos showing them entering and exiting hotel rooms together. Additionally, there were over 82 video calls and 50 pages of phone conversations. Kim and Jonathan had been visiting a motel at least 4 times a week for the past 3 months, spending an average of 2 hours together during each visit. "It appears that for the past month there have been 2 men meeting your wife 4 times a week. Do you recognize this man? Oh my God, is this Jason Sinclair? Is he the CEO of her company? Are you saying she's involved with 2 men, one of whom is the CEO? I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but based on the evidence from text messages, phone calls, and videos, it's evident that he's engaged in a carnal relationship with your wife. The video call labeled balcony actually captured them in a lovemaking moment, with him behind her as she leaned over the railing. They seemed unaware they were being recorded. Our high-definition video captured close-ups of their faces, and the audio was also recorded." He played the video on the 80-inch screen. There was Kim, my wife, leaning over the railing with her CEO standing behind her. I felt sick to my stomach. I had to step out of the room for a few minutes to compose myself. I returned to the conference room, urging them to continue, as I was now eager to see what my wife had been up to. "The video labeled Balcony 2 shows your wife with both Jason and Jonathan simultaneously. I regret having to show you all this, but since they were in public, you can use these videos if you decide to proceed with your divorce and custody battle." I sat there, mouth agape, still finding it difficult to believe it could be Kim. I prayed fervently that it was all just a colossal mistake. "David, we've looked into Jonathan Wilkes and Jason Sinclair. Jonathan has been married for 10 years with 4 young children. Mr. Sinclair has also been married for 25 years with 3 grown children. Text messages reveal that Jonathan introduced Jason into their activities after your wife expressed interest in a triangle of love. It's quite grim, so I'll leave you to review it when you're ready. Here's the folder and a USB drive containing all the files and videos. Your lawyer will likely need both." When I met with my lawyer, she was astonished at the wealth of evidence we had gathered and couldn't believe there were no prior signs of infidelity. At home, Kim continued to play the role of a devoted wife and mother, behaving as if everything was normal. The lawyer outlined various legal avenues based on the evidence I provided, but needed time to explore our options fully, scheduling another appointment for the following week. I instructed her to begin filing the divorce papers as soon as possible. Leaving her office, I felt a pit in my stomach. I knew it was over before these meetings, but watching those videos extinguished any hope of reconciliation. I was still baffled. Who was this woman? Later that evening, after putting the girls to bed, we watched an old movie I found on Netflix called Unfaithful. I heard it was a good film. Let's give it a shot. I suggested, hitting play. Given the film's theme of infidelity, I had prepared for the conversation in advance. During the movie, I casually mentioned a female intern at my office who had been showing interest in me for months. "Can you imagine me with another woman?" I chuckled. Kim eyed me suspiciously. "Really? Who? If I catch you even thinking about being with her, I'm leaving. Got it? You're mine and no one else's," she asserted sternly. Despite my attempts to keep the mood light, she was dead serious. She made it abundantly clear that she wouldn't tolerate any deceit. It was astounding how indignant she was about it, considering her own actions. It was driving me mad. "David, why didn't you tell me about her sooner? What's her name? Kim?" "Relax. She's just an intern, a young, flirtatious girl. I've completely ignored her." "What about you, Kim? You're the most beautiful girl in your office. Do you mean to tell me no one ever flirts with you?" "Of course not. They all know I'm married and would never cheat on you. So, in our entire marriage, you never entertained the thought of being with another guy or did anything like that? Not even a friendly kiss? Have you ever cheated on me, baby?" Her anger flared. "Are you kidding me? Did you seriously just ask me that? I constantly express my love for you. I'm always faithful to you, and I couldn't imagine being with another man. You're being ridiculous. I can't believe you'd even think that." I apologized, agreeing with her, and resumed watching the movie. I chuckled to myself, thinking she could have been an actress with how convincing she was. No wonder she excelled at her job. Once things settled down, she leaned against my shoulder again, and I knew it was time. I grabbed my phone, opened the messaging app, and selected a photo of Kim and Jonathan kissing on the dance floor, his hand on her behind. I was studying the photo when she noticed my distraction. "What are you doing, David? Why aren't you watching the movie?" "Because what I'm looking at is more real." "What do you mean?" I muted the movie and displayed the photo to her. She froze, attempting to speak, but failing. I kept my gaze on the photo. "Quite the passionate kiss you're giving Jonathan. Allow me to explain. Where did you get this? You were dining with your buddy, Greg Stanton, who spotted you with that guy in the restaurant. He texted me to confirm if it was you or if he was mistaken. Turns out it was indeed you, and he sent me this. Also, gotta say, you look stunning in that dress. I've never seen you in something so revealing. Were you trying to impress your boyfriend?" "Oh, you have an explanation?" "I'm all ears," I remarked, placing the phone back on my lap. "Baby, we only had one dance, and he was intoxicated. After the song ended, he grabbed me and kissed me. What you don't see is that right afterward, I slapped him and caused a scene. I would never allow that to happen. I actually bought this dress for a business dinner, but didn't realize how revealing it was until now. I'm so sorry." "I understand. It happens." "And that was the only incident?" I sensed her wavering confidence and reassured her. "Yes, baby. And he won't try it again." The movie resumed, and I reclined quietly, knowing Kim was uneasy. After a few minutes, I retrieved my phone and began playing a video of them sitting on the couch, with hand under her skirt. She shot me a frightened look. "What are you watching now?" "Remember that night when you called, saying you had a long day and were getting ready for bed?" "Yes," she whispered. "It's interesting. I received another text from Greg, 2 hours after your call, and this time it was a video. Do you want to see?" I asked, hitting play, revealing her and Jonathan kissing, while his hands roamed her lovemaking areas that should have been mine alone. "I'm eager to hear a new explanation," I remarked, smiling. My anger had dissipated, replaced by contempt and amusement at her response. "Oh, David, I'm so sorry." After we hung up, Jonathan called saying we needed to discuss an issue with a client we were meeting in the morning. He asked me to meet him in the lobby to prepare. I barely recall this video because I had a few drinks and got a bit drunk. You know how I get when I'm intoxicated. I understand the video looks damning, but nothing happened beyond that. I distinctly recall going to my room, telling him to stop, reminding him I was happily married and leaving. Nothing transpired. You have to trust me. "That's part of the issue, kitten," I said, emphasizing the nickname. I noticed her reaction when I said that and continued. "The problem is, I've always believed you, yet in the last 20 minutes, you've lied to me twice. Can you understand my perspective? I'm here alone, and the woman I love is kissing her boss in 2 photos dressed in the most revealing outfit I've ever seen her wear. How do you think I feel, baby?" "David, I love you. This happened 3 months ago. Why didn't you confront me earlier? Honestly, I wanted to see if you'd come clean on your own. I wanted assurance that my wife was as truthful and transparent as we've always been with each other. But now I see where we stand. Are there any other lies? Are you involved with him? Do you love him now?" I was toying with her, relishing her confusion and performance. She began sobbing, repeatedly professing her love for me. "Kim, please refrain from telling me how much you love me. I know you love me and I still love you, but that doesn't change the reality of these photos. I need answers. Are there other deceptions?" I added, discreetly hitting the record button on the phone. "David, hear me out. Nothing beyond a kiss happened. I admit I kissed him, as you saw, but that was the extent of it. Each time I told him to stop. I'm not sure what Greg saw or told you, but you have to trust me." "All right, stop crying, baby. I trust you. However, I'm puzzled by your attire. You never dress like that for me, nor do you style your hair and makeup that way. Was it for him? You haven't answered my question. Do you have feelings for him? Are you considering leaving me?" "Kim, please. I need the truth." The tears resumed. "No, David. My love is only for you. I never want to lose you. Nothing happened. And I'm not sure why I dressed like that. It's unlike me. Perhaps it was because other women were dressed similarly, and I wanted to look as good. I'm not certain. I felt a bit insecure." "I can understand that. But why didn't you inform me about Jonathan and your interactions? Since nothing truly occurred and I ended it, I didn't want to upset you. He's my superior and I couldn't risk losing my job. If anything happened, if it truly did, I would have told you immediately. You understand, right?" I comforted her with a kiss and embraced her gently, allowing her to cry. This marked the beginning of a month-long scheme to exact my revenge. That night, we made love, and I reveled in her remarkable skills, detached as her spouse, and envisioning myself as one of her lovers. I refused to deny myself her body or caution her about anything peculiar. Her acting was commendable, but at that moment I was indifferent. She was more fervent than ever, attempting to convince me of my exclusive place in her heart. This routine persisted for the following weeks. Each night her performance was flawless, and I simply savored the spectacle. The next morning I checked the cloud for any correspondence with Jonathan. Predictably, she didn't disappoint. "Oh my God, someone took photos of us at the fair and sent them to David. His friend saw me at the restaurant without David. I'm unsure if he's aware, but the video showed us kissing. Damn. Now that you mention it, I recall a man with a phone across from us observing, but I didn't think much of it. How did David react?" "Nothing. I convinced him nothing happened. I intervened. He's unaware I spent the night in your room. I persuaded him it was drinks-induced and made amends. He's easily swayed. A few kisses and good lovemaking have always sufficed. Be cautious, baby. We agreed to meet there tomorrow at 1 p.m., as usual. Can't wait. Love you, baby." "Love you too, kitten." That marked the final message, and I sat silently pondering it all. Undoubtedly, I felt like the world's biggest fool. Yet, there's a certain satisfaction in revenge, so I proceeded with determination. However, I took pleasure in observing Kim's antics and awaited to see how many more lies she would spin. Naturally, my first course of action was to tend to my financial affairs, transferring funds, closing accounts, and the like. I opted to keep my primary Visa card active, but slashed the limit to $2,500 to mitigate potential damage. Since Kim remained clueless about my mounting anger, she never anticipated any changes. I confirmed with my lawyer that since the house was mine pre-marriage, I wouldn't be compelled to vacate upon notification. Naturally, I drafted the infamous email containing videos, texts, and photos that I eventually sent to all her contacts, friends, family, and coworkers. Additionally, I crafted duplicate binders from my personal account for Mrs. Sinclair and Mrs. Wilkes to share in their anguish. These would be distributed simultaneously with notifications and legal filings. I instructed my lawyer to gear up for public civil lawsuits against both Jonathan, her boss, and Jason, the company's CEO. Given the company's prominence on the East Coast, my lawyer relished the prospect of involving the CEO. We planned to propose a settlement before unveiling the CEO and manager's alleged carnal aggravation of employees. Collaborating with child services attorneys, we aimed for full custody and diligently compiled documents for the investigation. Over the ensuing weeks, everything appeared normal. We tended to the children and spent quality time together daily. Our conversations danced around the elephant in the room, leaving the issue untouched. I'm certain my silence on the matter drove her to the brink of madness. The uncertainty of my thoughts must have been agonizing. To further toy with Kim, I posed a few probing questions. "So Kim, has your boss taken any action against you since the fair? Is there something you'd like to share?" Having gleaned insights from her conversations with Jonathan, I marveled at her composure in maintaining her facade of deceit. It was amusing to observe her reaction, and now I could even predict when she was about to lie. She responded calmly, stating that nothing had occurred. It felt odd because both of us were acting as if nothing had transpired, which was true. In reality, he remained completely professional, and our interactions were minimal due to our busy schedules. I sat there with a wry smile, still astonished that the woman who bore my children and whom I loved could lie so effortlessly. That night, I released the last remnants of the anger simmering within me. I confronted her and took full advantage of her that night. "Oh my God, David, what got into you? You're behaving so wildly today. I've never seen you so bold and uninhibited. I enjoyed it." What a whirlwind, I thought to myself. I knew this would be the final encounter before all of this turmoil surfaced the next day, and I intended to take everything I could from my soon-to-be ex-wife. That afternoon, the sheriff entered the offices of Tricom International and requested to see Mr. Sinclair. Moments later, Sheriff Clark handed him an envelope. "Mr. Sinclair, you've been served." A moment later, Sinclair found himself alone in his spacious office, clutching the envelope with fear gripping his entire being. After reading the complaint repeatedly, he promptly instructed his secretary to summon Jason to his office, while simultaneously calling him. Jason, too, had just been served by the same sheriff. He rushed into Sinclair's office, and they both stood there, stunned and bewildered. "What the hell? How did this happen? Jason, if my wife catches wind of this, I'm finished. This is on you. You assured me this woman would never leave us. Fix this, Jason, or I swear I'll ruin you and your family. Do you understand?" Sinclair was not one to be trifled with. A ruthless businessman who had clawed his way to the top of the multi-billion-dollar organization and had no intention of backing down. Jonathan hurried out of his office and waited for the elevator to descend to the 12th floor, intending to speak with Kim. As he traversed the hallway toward her office, he noticed the sheriff approaching from the opposite direction, indicating that he had come from Kim's direction. Bursting into her office, he found her seated at her desk, tears streaming down her face. Overwhelmed with emotion, she was unable to speak. David had shattered her world, much like she had done to him months earlier. It took her more than an hour to compose herself enough to articulate her thoughts. "Akeem, what in the world happened? How did he find out about everything? What do you mean?" "I've just been served with divorce papers. What do you mean by us?" "Sinclair and I are also being sued and facing a civil lawsuit for our actions. We're unsure of the evidence against us, but there must be more than just the 2 images you saw. You need to convince David to back off, or else Sinclair will ruin us and my family." "Oh my God, this is terrible. It's awful. You must go to him and make him see reason. Do whatever it takes to halt this. Head home and address this. Call me tonight if you can and keep me informed." Trembling, Kim packed her belongings and drove home. Her beloved husband and the father of her children was divorcing her. She didn't want a divorce and genuinely loved David. However, she found herself unable to resist the allure of carnal excitement. She needed to make David understand that she couldn't bear to lose him over this. Returning to an empty house, she found the girls were at David's sister's house, as they were every afternoon while they both worked. She phoned David's sister, requesting if she could keep the children overnight. Without inquiring further, Katie gladly agreed to take care of the girls for the night. Kim showered, styled her hair and makeup, and anxiously awaited David's return from work. At 6 o'clock, she heard the garage door open and nervously anticipated his entrance into the house. "Hi, Kim. Didn't expect to see you tonight. Thought you'd be with Jonathan." "Oh, wait, he's married with kids. This might get awkward." "David, please, let's talk." She took his hand and seated him beside her on the sofa. Despite the circumstances, she appeared surprisingly composed and more pleasant than usual when greeting him. Expecting this, he played along. "David, as you already know, I was served today. But do you realize I don't want a divorce? I need you and love you. I won't sign these papers. Jonathan means nothing to me. Yes, we had lovemaking, but it wasn't love. I just needed it, and I'm truly sorry. I'll never do it again, I promise." "Oh, you promise? Guess I can trust you now." "Sure, let's forget everything and get back to normal," I said, smiling lovingly. Kim embraced me and planted a kiss. "Thank you, baby. I love you so much. I'm grateful you forgive me and understand I won't lie to you again." Surprised, I was certain she caught my sarcasm. Pulling away, I gently pushed her aside. "You're delusional. I can't trust you anymore. After all your lies and deceit, there's nothing left. I gave you many chances, but you kept lying, deceiving me and ruining our lives. I know all about your daily hotel rendezvous with your bosses. Did you really think I'd take you back after all this? Have you even considered the damage you're causing to the girls? I can't turn a blind eye to this. But you can. And why go after Sinclair and Jonathan? Well, your partners in crime are also CEOs of a multi-billion-dollar company. Once I'm out of here, I'll need money to properly support the girls. Since they're partly responsible for destroying our marriage and my life, I'll destroy them too. I plan to dismantle their family, hit them financially, and use them the way they used you. Kim had never witnessed David express himself in such a manner, nor had she seen him so intensely angry and focused. The seriousness of the situation finally struck her, and she realized she had lost control over both the situation and her husband. All she could do now was plead. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she knelt before David, clutching his legs, begging for forgiveness. Though David felt a pang of sympathy for her, his anger overpowered any compassion, and he lifted her onto the sofa. Speaking to her in a gentle tone, as if she were a child, David laid out a plan. Listen, Kim, pack your bag and stay at your mom's for a few nights. Get a lawyer, then we can arrange a meeting to discuss everything. In the meantime, a word to the wise. I suggest you stay away from Jason and Jonathan. Things are about to get messy. Later that evening at her mom's, she explained that she and David had a disagreement and she needed to stay with her for a while. At 11 p.m., she called Jonathan on his cell. Jonathan quickly looped in Jason on a three-way call. Jason, are you here? Kim, are you there? Yes, we are here, Sinclair initiated the conversation. So, Kim, did you manage to persuade him to give up the lawsuits and the divorce? No. In fact, he kicked me out and warned me to be careful because it could lead to trouble. Sinclair shouted into the phone, Jesus Christ, Jonathan, what have you done? Kim, you're a freaking prick. I swear I will have you and Jonathan eliminated if my family finds out about this. I don't care what you do, but make it stop. Kim cried, I can't do anything. He is out of control and won't listen to anything I say. He doesn't even answer my calls or texts. Sinclair spoke up. Jonathan, you need to fix this. Make an appointment with David and have him meet us at a bar somewhere. Anything loud and the noisier the better. Kim, you will be there too and ask him to drop the lawsuit in front of us. If he says no, then Jonathan and I will explain how damaging it will be for him and his family if he doesn't back down. I have people tasked with fixing things like this, and I won't hesitate to use them to keep this show from turning into complete crap. Jonathan, do you understand what you need to do? Yes, Mr. Sinclair. Kim, you know what you have to do, right? Yes, Mr. Sinclair. Do it and make it happen tomorrow afternoon. We don't have time to waste. Sinclair disappeared. Kim and Jonathan hung up after a few minutes, considering the situation. That night, upon hearing the call, David wasn't surprised by their desperation and devised his own plan. As expected, Jonathan called the next morning to arrange a settlement meeting. They agreed to meet at 6 p.m. in a courtyard. At 4 p.m., David was at his private investigator's office, preparing for the meeting. They utilized cutting-edge technology with noise cancellation to capture clear sound, even in noisy environments. A private investigator would also be present to film the meeting as evidence. David arrived at 6:15, purposefully keeping them waiting and allowing time for the private investigator to set up his video camera. Upon seeing Kim, he approached the group. Kim, I'm surprised to see you here with your partners, but I suppose we know where your allegiance lies. Gentlemen, what brings us together? Why are we here? Sinclair spoke up. David, I'm Jason Sinclair, and I requested this meeting. Sinclair, you look quite different in person. These videos don't capture your essence. Can't say it's a pleasure to meet you. Indeed, that's precisely why we're here. This is Jonathan Wilkes. Jonathan, the man who slept with my wife and wrecked my marriage. Can't say it's a pleasure to meet any of you. Sinclair interjected, I understand your anger. If I were in your shoes, I'm not sure how I'd react. But we need to discuss something. Follow me. What's on your mind? Asked David. We want you to drop the lawsuits against me, Jonathan, and the company. Funny, that's all. Oh no, sorry, can't do that. Someone has to pay for taking away the most important thing in my life, David stated, looking at Kim. The only woman I've ever loved, and the mother of my children. Kim began to cry, realizing the magnitude of the damage she had caused. What will it take for you to end this and take Kim back? Name your price. Firstly, no amount of money could ever make me take her back. She betrayed my love, trust, and our children's lives for a fling with you two. It's out of the question. I'll drop the civil and corporate cases under two conditions. Firstly, I want $5 million compensation. Secondly, I want to meet both your wives, and Kim must fully admit her actions. If you agree to these conditions, I'll end the legal proceedings. Go to hell, David. I'll offer you $100,000, and you'll sign an agreement to keep quiet about this forever, Sinclair whispered. I won't let my family suffer. If they find out, David, I'll end you. Kim told us your daily routine, making you vanish would be easy. Let's try again. David was surprised, but smiled and took a sip of his drink. Well, I'll reduce the amount to $4 million, but your families must know what you did. Sinclair was stunned. David, you're sealing your fate. Think it over. Drop the charges and take Kim back. It was just a fling. We can resolve this. David grabbed his phone and sent 2 text messages. Then he accessed his email and dispatched the prearranged email containing all the videos and images. Texts had now been distributed to all of Kim's friends, family, and colleagues. The 2 messages he sent were to the couriers stationed outside Jason and Jonathan's residences, awaiting his directives. The instructions were simple. Deliver the package. Within moments, Mrs. Sinclair and Mrs. Wilkes possessed duplicate 3-ring binders containing comprehensive evidence of their husband's affair, including photos, videos, messages, phone logs, and other incriminating evidence. Sinclair, growing increasingly irate due to David's apparent indifference, erupted in anger. What the hell, David? I'm speaking to you. What's your response? Are you dropping the charges? To which David retorted, My answer to you, Jason, Jonathan, and my wife is go to hell. Just then, the phones of both Jason and Jonathan began to ring. It was their wives on the line. Sinclair's face reddened, shooting David a glare of fury. Jonathan, visibly shaken, even teared up. Kim, bewildered, questioned David about the commotion. His response was cryptic. Check your email in a few minutes, and I believe you'll understand. After ending the call with his wife, Sinclair pointed an accusatory finger at David. You're dead, David. I'll slit your throat and watch you die like a dog. With that threat, he stormed out of the bar. Jonathan, confronting David, uttered a plaintive, Why? Why would you do this to me? David was astounded by the question. Seriously? You've been using my wife, the love of my life, and the mother of my twin girls, every day for the past 6 months, arranging trysts with Sinclair. And you're surprised someone would retaliate? Everything I sent to your sweet wife was for her sake, to expose what a depraved beast of prey you are and how you've destroyed countless lives. Kim's phone began ringing as her sister, brother, and aunt called her shortly afterward. They all watched the videos and photos and had numerous questions. Initially, Kim denied knowledge of the situation, but then checked her email to see what I had sent. Her jaw dropped, and she shot me an angry look. How could you do this to me? You've made it too easy. Darling, I truly love you, but it's over between us. After I hand this audio recording of the meeting to the authorities and social services, my lawyer is confident I'll secure full custody of the girls, and you'll be fortunate to evade jail time. I'm sorry, but you must face the consequences of your actions to prevent them from becoming public knowledge. Tricom resolved the lawsuit by compensating David Hunter with $2 million. Jason Sinclair was ousted as CEO and terminated without severance due to breaching the morals clause in his contract. He suffered losses exceeding $10 million in stock options and forfeited a $5 million severance package. Sinclair also received a 5-year sentence for conspiracy to commit homicide and other charges. His wife divorced him while he was incarcerated and financially decimated him upon investigation of his business dealings. He exited prison destitute, bereft of family, and homeless. This news provided David with some solace, and he even cracked a smile for the first time in months. Mrs. Wilkes also divorced Jonathan, leaving him without money, shelter, child support, or half of his income in alimony. He was fined $1 million in a civil trial for conspiracy, infidelity, and loss of affection. Following his job loss, Jonathan resorted to working as a day laborer. Learning of Jonathan's downfall further gratified David, who took pleasure in Jonathan's subsequent bankruptcy and life under an overpass among day workers. Kim received a 5-year prison sentence, but with David's assistance, it was commuted to 1 year of house arrest, followed by 4 years of probation for conspiracy. She lost custody of the children, and David gained full custody. Despite her efforts, she failed to secure a divorce due to the evidence and the nature of the crime. With the house belonging to David, she found herself homeless upon termination. She earned the same amount as David, so no child support was necessary. Kim spiraled into a profound depression and now resides in her mother's basement. Her family turned against her for her actions, resulting in the loss of her visitation rights with her children. The email I sent with the attached videos and photos exposed a dark side of Kim that no one had recognized before. This had the intended effect, completely shattering the support network within the Kim family. Forgiveness seems unattainable for Kim, even from herself. She relies on medication following 3 self-destruction attempts and has been in and out of mental hospitals for the past 6 months, struggling to come to terms with the lives she contributed to destroying. David now dedicates all his time to his daughters. Being free from work post-divorce allows him to focus entirely on raising his children. Since Kim's self-destruction attempt, the girls have not seen their mother, but they receive ample support from David's sister and mother. They will recover from this traumatic ordeal without any lasting effects. While revenge brought a fleeting sense of satisfaction, it cannot fully heal David's wounds. He still harbors love and forgiveness for Kim, but the memory of her betrayal remains etched in his mind. Taking care of his daughters keeps him occupied and wards off loneliness. However, due to the betrayal, lies, and deceit, it will take years before David can open his heart to love and trust again. It's remarkable how seemingly insignificant actions can have profound effects on numerous lives. Caution is advised.
Story 4.
Ryland Grady leaned back in his ergonomic office chair, fingers flying across the keyboard as he put the finishing touches on his latest consulting report. The San Francisco skyline stretched out beyond his window, a testament to the tech empire he'd helped build over the last decade. At 35, he was at the top of his game, a self-made millionaire whose sharp mind and relentless work ethic had catapulted him from humble beginnings to the upper echelons of Silicon Valley. As he hit send on the email to his latest Fortune 500 client, Ryland allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. Another 7-figure payday in the bank. Not that anyone would guess it to look at him. His simple button-down and jeans were a far cry from the flashy designer suits favored by many of his colleagues. The battered Ford pickup in the parking garage stood out like a sore thumb among the sea of Teslas and BMWs. Ryland preferred it that way. He learned the value of humility and discretion from his mother back in Boise. The memory of her exhausted face as she came home from another double shift was seared into his mind. They'd never had much, but she'd given him everything he needed to succeed. "You don't need to show off to prove your worth, she'd always said. "Let your actions speak for themselves." It was a lesson he'd taken to heart, even as his bank account had grown to eye-watering proportions. What was the point of flaunting wealth when it couldn't buy the things that really mattered? The ping of his phone interrupted his musings. A text from Kim. "Dinner at the Andersons tonight. Don't forget." Ryland sighed, a hint of tension creeping into his shoulders. These dinners with Kim's friends always left him drained. He much preferred quiet nights at home with his wife, but she'd been pushing for more couple time lately. Probably another attempt to nudge him towards a more lavish lifestyle. As he packed up his laptop, Ryland's mind drifted to the early days of their relationship. Kim had been a breath of fresh air, vibrant, ambitious, with a zest for life that pulled him out of his workaholic shell. Her wide-eyed enthusiasm when he'd proposed still brought a warmth to his chest. But lately, that sparkle had dimmed, replaced by a restlessness he couldn't quite pin down. The drive home was quicker than usual, Silicon Valley traffic mercifully light for once. As Ryland pulled into the driveway of their modest suburban home, he spotted Kim through the window, pacing back and forth on her phone. Even from a distance, he could see the agitation in her movements. He barely had time to close the front door before Kim rounded on him, her perfectly manicured nails tapping in impatient rhythm against her phone case. "There you are. I was starting to think you'd forgotten." Ryland raised an eyebrow. "I'm home an hour earlier than usual, Kim." She waved a dismissive hand. "Well, we need to leave in 30 minutes if we want to make it on time. The Andersons just moved to that new development in Los Altos Hills, remember?" "Right," Ryland said, trying to keep the weariness out of his voice. "Let me just grab a quick shower and change." Kim's eyes narrowed as she took in his worn jeans and scuffed work boots. "Please tell me you're not planning to wear that ratty flannel shirt again. This is an important dinner. Jason just made partner at his law firm. We need to make a good impression." Ryland bit back a retort. There was no point in reminding her that his ratty wardrobe had never stopped him from closing multi-million-dollar deals. Instead, he simply nodded and headed for the stairs. "Oh, and honey," Kim called after him, "maybe we could take my car tonight? The truck is a bit conspicuous in that neighborhood. Ryland felt his jaw clench, but forced out a neutral sure before disappearing into their bedroom. As the hot water of the shower pounded against his back, he tried to shake off the irritation. Kim didn't mean any harm. She just wanted what was best for them, even if her idea of best sometimes felt suffocating. 25 minutes later, they were cruising down the 280 in Kim's sleek Audi, purchased on Ryland's dime but registered in her name. He had to admit, the leather seats were a lot more comfortable than his truck's worn upholstery. Kim chatted animatedly about the latest neighborhood gossip, filling him in on who was feuding with whom and which couples were on the verge of divorce. Ryland made the appropriate noises of interest, but his mind was already dreading the endless small talk ahead. The Andersons' new home was exactly as ostentatious as Ryland had feared. A sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion perched on a hillside, complete with manicured gardens and a fountain gurgling in the circular driveway. He could practically feel Kim vibrating with envy beside him. "Can you believe this place?" she whispered as they walked up to the ornate front door. Jason said they got it for a steal at only $8 million. Imagine living somewhere like this. Ryland chose not to point out that he could buy this house 10 times over without blinking. Instead, he plastered on a polite smile as the doors swung open to reveal their hosts. "Kim, Ryland, so glad you could make it." Melissa Anderson air-kissed them both, the scent of expensive perfume lingering in her wake. Her husband Jason stood behind her, all white teeth and California tan. Come in, come in." Melissa ushered them inside. Dinner's almost ready, but Jason was just about to give everyone the grand tour. "You have to see the wine cellar, it's to die for." The next hour passed in a blur of high ceilings, marble countertops, and artisanal this and that. Ryland nodded and smiled at all the appropriate moments, but he couldn't help noticing the way Kim's eyes lit up at each new extravagance. The longing in her gaze was impossible to miss. Finally, they settled around an enormous dining table that probably cost more than some people's yearly salary. Conversation flowed freely, lubricated by bottles of wine that Jason was all too eager to show off. "So, Ryland," Jason said between bites of Wagyu beef, "Kim tells us you're in tech consulting? How's business these days?" Ryland shrugged, keeping his tone modest. "Can't complain. Plenty of work to go around in the valley." "I'll bet," Jason chuckled. "Though I imagine the real money's in starting your own company. Ever thought about making the leap from consultant to founder?" Before Ryland could answer, Kim jumped in. "Oh, Ryland's not really the entrepreneurial type. He likes the stability of consulting." There was a hint of something in her voice. Disappointment? Embarrassment? "Nothing wrong with that," Jason said smoothly, though Ryland caught the patronizing edge to his smile. "We can't all be risk-takers." The conversation moved on, but Ryland found himself withdrawing further. He watched as Kim laughed too loudly at Jason's jokes, her eyes sparkling in a way they hadn't around him in months. When Melissa started talking about their upcoming trip to the Maldives, he saw the naked envy on his wife's face. It was nearing midnight by the time they made their goodbyes. The drive home was quiet, tension thrumming between them like a live wire. "They seem happy," Kim said finally, her voice carefully neutral. Ryland grunted noncommittally. "Did you see that kitchen? I bet Melissa loves cooking in there. Remember when we talked about remodeling ours?" "Our kitchen works just fine," Ryland said, perhaps a bit more sharply than he'd intended. Kim's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not saying it doesn't work, but wouldn't it be nice to have something a little more modern? We've been in this house for 5 years now. Don't you think it's time for an upgrade?" Ryland's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "We don't need an upgrade, Kim. We have everything we need." "Need, sure," Kim muttered. "But what about want? Don't you ever want more than just getting by?" The words hit Ryland like a slap. Getting by? They lived in a $1.5 million home in one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country. Kim drove a luxury car, had a closet full of designer clothes. How could she possibly think they were just getting by? But of course, she had no idea about the true extent of their wealth. Ryland had always kept his finances private, not wanting money to change the dynamic of their relationship. Now he was starting to wonder if that had been a mistake. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. By the time they pulled into the garage, Ryland's patience was hanging by a thread. I'm going to bed, he announced as soon as they were inside. Early meeting tomorrow. Kim's face fell. Already? I thought maybe we could talk about... Not tonight, Kim. Rylan cut her off, already heading for the stairs. I'm beat. He felt a twinge of guilt at the hurt look on her face, but he pushed it aside. He needed time to think, to figure out how they'd ended up so far apart without him even realizing it. Sleep was elusive that night. Rylan tossed and turned, Kim's words echoing in his head. When he finally drifted off, his dreams were a confused jumble of dollar signs and disappointed faces. The next few weeks passed in a haze of work and stilted conversations. Rylan threw himself into his consulting, taking on even more clients in an effort to distract himself from the growing distance between him and Kim. She, in turn, seemed to be spending more and more time with her real estate colleagues, coming home later and later with forced smiles and vague explanations. It all came to a head on a quiet Sunday evening. They were having dinner takeout because neither of them had felt like cooking. The TV droned softly in the background, filling the silence that had become all too common lately. So, Kim said, pushing her lo mein around her plate, Stacy's having a little get-together next weekend. Just a casual thing with some of the girls from the office. You don't mind if I go, do you? Rylan shrugged. Why would I mind? You don't need my permission, Kim. She flinched slightly at his tone. I know that. I don't want you to feel like I'm avoiding you or anything. Are you? The words were out before he could stop them. Kim's eyes widened. What? No, of course not. Why would you think that? Rylan set down his chopsticks, suddenly not hungry. Come on, Kim. We've barely spoken in weeks. Every time I come home, you're either out or on your way out. What am I supposed to think? I've been busy with work, she said defensively. You know how it is? The market's been crazy lately, right? Rylan said flatly. Because you've been so successful closing deals. As soon as the words left his mouth, he knew he'd gone too far. Kim recoiled as if he'd slapped her, hurt and anger warring in her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? She demanded. Rylan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Nothing. Forget I said anything. No, I want to know what you meant by that, Kim pressed. Do you think I'm not working hard enough? That I'm just playing at having a career? That's not what I said, Rylan protested, but Kim's on a roll now. You know what? Not all of us can be big-shot consultants making six figures. Some of us are still trying to build something for ourselves. But I guess that's not good enough for you, is it? Rylan felt his own temper rising. When have I ever said that, Kim? When have I ever made you feel like what you do isn't enough? You don't have to say it. Kim shot back. It's an every disapproving look when I talk about work. Every time you brush off my ideas for improving our life. God forbid we actually enjoy the money you make instead of living like we're still struggling college students. There's nothing wrong with living within our means, Rylan said tightly. Just because we don't flaunt every penny doesn't mean we're struggling. Kim let out a bitter laugh. Our means? Rylan, we live in a nice house in a good neighborhood. That's great. But you act like splurging on anything beyond the basics is some kind of moral failing. Would it kill you to want something more? To actually enjoy life a little? I do enjoy life, Rylan insisted. I enjoy our life. At least I thought I did. Apparently, that's not enough for you anymore. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Kim's face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. You know what? Maybe it's not, she said quietly. Maybe we want different things. Maybe we're not as compatible as we thought. Rylan felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. What are you saying, Kim? She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. I'm saying, I don't know. I need some time to think, to figure out what I really want. Kim, Rylan started, but she was already heading for the door. I'm going to stay with Stacy for a few days, she said, not meeting his eyes. I think we both need some space to figure things out. Before Rylan could formulate a response, she was gone, the sound of the front door closing echoing through the suddenly empty house. He sat there for a long time, staring at the half-eaten takeout containers and wondering how they'd gotten to this point. Part of him wanted to run after Kim, to tell her everything about his real income, about the millions sitting in offshore accounts. But another part, the part that remembered his mother's lessons about the true value of things, held him back. If money was all it took to make Kim happy, to make her stay, Was that really a marriage worth saving? The next few days passed in a blur. Rylan went through the motions at work, his usual sharp focus dulled by the constant replay of their argument in his head. He found himself reaching for his phone a dozen times a day, composing messages to Kim only to delete them unsent. On the fourth day, he came home to find Kim waiting for him, a small suitcase by her feet. His heart leapt for a moment, thinking she'd come to her senses. But the grim set of her mouth told a different story. "We need to talk," she said, and Rylan's world came crashing down. What followed was quite possibly the most surreal conversation of Rylan's life. Kim, her voice alternating between anger and tears, laid out all her frustrations. How she felt stifled by their modest lifestyle. How she'd watched her friends advance in their careers and upgrade their lives while she felt stuck in place. How she'd come to resent what she saw as Rylan's lack of ambition. "I can't do this anymore, Ree," she said finally. "I thought I could be happy with a simple life, but I'm not. I want more. I deserve more." Rylan listened in stunned silence, a maelstrom of emotions churning inside him. Hurt, anger, disbelief, and underneath it all, a cold, hard nugget of resolve. "So that's it," he said when she'd finished. "You're walking away from 5 years of marriage because I don't make enough money for you?" Kim flinched. "It's not just about the money. It's about feeling like we're moving forward, like we're building something together. But you're content to just exist." "I need more than that." Rylan nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. "I see. And I suppose you think you'll find that more out there somewhere." "I have to try," Kim said, not meeting his eyes. "I'm still young. I have time to start over. To find someone who shares my goals." "Someone richer, you mean?" Rylan said flatly. Kim's silence was all the answer he needed. "All right," he said, surprising himself with how calm he sounded. "If that's what you want, I won't stand in your way. We'll get a quick, clean divorce. No fuss, no muss." Kim looked up, startled. You're not going to fight this?" Rylan shook his head, his voice steady. "What's the point? You've made it clear what you want, and it's not me. Not unless I suddenly turn into some flashy millionaire overnight." He watched the flicker of regret in Kim's eyes, quickly replaced by determination. She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. We can do this amicably, right?" "Of course," Rylan said, his tone neutral. "I'll have Carla handle things on my end. She'll make sure everything's fair." Kim's eyebrows rose slightly at the mention of Rylan's high-powered lawyer friend, but she didn't comment. Instead, she picked up her suitcase, hesitating for a moment. "I am sorry, Ree," she said softly. "I do love you. I just—" "Not enough," Rylan finished for her. "I get it. Go on, Kim. Your new life is waiting." As the door closed behind her, Rylan let out a long, slow breath. He walked to the window, watching as Kim's car pulled out of the driveway for the last time. A mix of emotions swirled within him. Anger, hurt, a touch of relief, and underneath it all, a steely determination. He pulled out his phone, dialing a familiar number. "Carla? It's Rylan. I need your help with something. How fast can you process a divorce?" The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of paperwork and terse meetings. True to his word, Rylan kept things civil, agreeing to a modest settlement that wouldn't reveal the true extent of his wealth. Kim, eager to start her new life, didn't push for more. It was during one of these meetings that Rylan overheard a snippet of conversation between Kim and her friend Stacy. They were huddled in a corner of the lawyer's office, speaking in hushed tones. "I'm telling you, Kim, this guy is perfect," Stacy was saying. "Nate Cole. He's got money, style, everything you've been looking for. And he's been asking about you." Rylan turned away, his jaw clenching. So Kim had already lined up her next target. He shouldn't have been surprised, but the speed of it still stung. The day the divorce was finalized, Rylan found himself alone in the house he'd once shared with Kim. He wandered from room to room, memories pressing in from all sides. In the kitchen, he paused, remembering Kim's complaints about wanting to remodel. With a sudden burst of energy, he grabbed a notepad and started sketching out plans for a complete overhaul. Why not? It was his house now. He could do whatever he wanted with it. As he worked, Rylan felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For years, he'd been holding back, trying to maintain a facade of modest success to keep Kim grounded. Now he was free. Free to live as he chose, to enjoy the fruits of his labor without guilt or explanation. His phone buzzed with a text from Carla. "It's done. You're officially a free man." Ryland smiled, a plan forming in his mind. He'd give Kim exactly what she wanted, a glimpse of the wealthy lifestyle she'd been craving. But by the time she realized what she'd thrown away, it would be far too late. He opened his laptop, firing off emails to his financial advisors. It was time to start making some very visible investments. Let the rumors start flying about the suddenly successful Ryland Grady. He'd make sure they reached Kim's ears, but always secondhand, always just out of reach. As night fell, Ryland stood at his window, looking out over the Silicon Valley skyline. He raised a glass of whiskey in a silent toast. To new beginnings, to sweet revenge, and to the lesson Kim was about to learn the hard way. Be careful what you wish for. Little did he know, the wheels of fate were already in motion. Across town, Kim was on her first date with Nate Cole, dazzled by his charm and apparent wealth. She had no idea of the house of cards she was walking into, or of the storm brewing on the horizon. Ryland's phone buzzed again, a news alert about a rising star in the tech world. He smiled, a cold, determined glint in his eye. The game was on. Weeks had passed since the divorce, and Ryland found himself settling into a new routine. His days were filled with work, his evenings with the quiet satisfaction of finally living life on his own terms. The kitchen remodel was well underway, and he'd started making strategic appearances at high-profile tech events, carefully cultivating his new public image. One crisp morning, Ryland was enjoying his coffee on the patio when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, eyebrow raising at the unfamiliar number. Curiosity got the better of him. "Ryland Grady speaking." He answered, voice neutral. "Ryland?" The voice on the other end was shaky, uncertain. It took him a moment to place it. "Kim." He fought to keep the surprise out of his tone. "What do you want?" Can we talk? Please? I need to see you." The desperation in her voice was palpable. Ryland's first instinct was to hang up, but a cold curiosity took hold. "This could be interesting." "Fine," he said flatly. The cafe on 3rd Street. 1 hour. He arrived early, choosing a table with a clear view of the entrance. Right on time, Kim walked in, and Ryland had to stifle a gasp. She looked terrible, hair disheveled, dark circles under her eyes, designer clothes wrinkled and unkempt. This was not the polished, ambitious woman who had walked out on him. Kim slid into the seat across from him, hands fidgeting nervously with her purse. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. Ryland leaned back, face impassive. "What do you want, Kim?" She took a deep breath. I made a huge mistake, Everything's falling apart. Nate, he's not who I thought he was. We're drowning in debt. And I miss the stability we had. I miss you." Ryland's eyebrows shot up. "Stability? That's rich, coming from you. Wasn't our life too boring, too modest for your tastes?" Kim flinched. I know. I was stupid. I thought I wanted all that flash and excitement. But now," she trailed off, looking lost. "Now what?" Ryland pressed, a hint of steel in his voice. "You thought you'd come crawling back, and I'd welcome you with open arms?" "No. I hoped." "God, I don't know what I hoped." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just know I made the biggest mistake of my life walking away from you." Ryland studied her for a long moment. Part of him, a part he wasn't proud of, relished seeing her so broken. But mostly he felt nothing. The woman in front of him was a stranger, one he no longer had any desire to know. "Kim," he said slowly, "I make $1.5 million a year." The color drained from Kim's face. What? "No, that's impossible. You never." "I didn't think it mattered." Ryland cut her off, voice cold. "You left without ever really knowing me, Kim. Without ever bothering to look beyond the surface." Kim's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. She looked like she'd been slapped. But why didn't you ever say anything? Why did we live so modestly?" Ryland's laugh was without humor. "Because money isn't everything, Kim. I thought you understood that once. Clearly I was wrong. We can fix this, can't we?" Kim leaned forward, voice trembling. I was wrong. I was so stupid. I just didn't know. Please, give me another chance. Rylan looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the desperation, the regret, and he felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just a bone-deep weariness. You already made your choice, Kim, he said quietly. I'm not a second option. I'm not a safety net. And I'm certainly not a fool. Before Kim could respond, a man's voice cut through the tension. Kim? What's going on here? Rylan looked up to see a tall, well-dressed man approaching their table. Even without the introduction, he would have pegged this as Nate Cole. The flashy watch, the too-white smile, it all screamed new money and bad decisions. Kim's eyes widened in panic. Nate! This isn't, we were just... Rylan stood, gathering his coat. I'll let you two figure it out, he said calmly. He turned to Nate, offering a bland smile. Good luck. You're gonna need it. As he walked away, he heard Kim's frantic explanations and Nate's increasingly angry responses. He didn't look back. The encounter left Rylan feeling oddly energized. He threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, taking on high-profile clients and making waves in the tech world. His name started appearing in industry publications, whispers of his success spreading through Silicon Valley like wildfire. It was at one of these industry events that he met Chloe Adams. She was giving a presentation on innovative software development techniques, and Rylan found himself captivated not just by her ideas, but by her down-to-earth demeanor. After her talk, he approached her at the networking mixer. Impressive presentation, he said, offering his hand. Rylan Grady. Chloe's handshake was firm, her smile genuine. Chloe Adams. And thanks. I was worried I'd put everyone to sleep with all that technical jargon. Rylan chuckled. Far from it. Your ideas on agile development are fascinating. I'd love to hear more about how you're implementing them in real-world scenarios. They fell into easy conversation, talking shop and swapping industry stories. Rylan was surprised to find himself genuinely enjoying the interaction. It had been a long time since he'd connected with someone on an intellectual level like this. As the evening wound down, Rylan found himself reluctant to end the conversation. Listen, he said, I know this is a bit forward, but would you like to grab coffee sometime? Continue this discussion in a less corporate setting. Chloe tilted her head, considering. You know what? I'd like that. But full disclosure, I'm not interested in climbing any corporate ladders or latching onto the next big thing. If that's what you're after, I'll save us both some time. Rylan felt a genuine smile spread across his face. Chloe, that might be the most refreshing thing I've heard all year. Their coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into long walks discussing everything from coding philosophies to favorite books. Rylan found himself opening up in a way he never had with Kim, sharing his background, his mother's influence, his real feelings about wealth and success. Chloe, in turn, shared her own story, her passion for coding, her desire to make a difference in the world through technology. She was brilliant, kind, and refreshingly unimpressed by displays of wealth. Weeks turned into months, and Rylan realized he was happier than he'd been in years. He and Chloe complemented each other perfectly, challenging and supporting one another in equal measure. One lazy Sunday morning, as they lounged on Rylan's patio enjoying breakfast, Chloe brought up a topic they'd danced around for weeks. So, she said, setting down her coffee mug, are we going to talk about the elephant in the room? Rylan raised an eyebrow. Which elephant would that be? Chloe rolled her eyes fondly. The one where you're clearly some kind of secret millionaire, but you live like a normal human being. Don't get me wrong, I love that about you. But I'm curious about the story there. Rylan was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then, slowly, he began to tell her everything about his childhood, about Kim, about his decision to keep his wealth private. When he finished, Chloe reached across the table, taking his hand. Thank you for trusting me with that, she said softly. It can't have been easy. Rylan squeezed her hand. Oddly enough, that's how I know it's different. It's real. Chloe smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. Well, in that case, I have a confession to make too. Rylan's heart skipped a beat. Oh, I've been secretly hoping you'd offer to fund my startup idea, she said, face serious. Then she burst out laughing at Rylan's shocked expression. I'm kidding. God, your face. Rylan joined in her laughter, feeling lighter than he had in years. This, he realized, was what he'd been missing all along. Not just a partner, but a true equal. Someone who saw him for who he was, not what he had. As their laughter subsided, Chloe's expression turned thoughtful. All joking aside, I do have some ideas for socially responsible tech initiatives. Not looking for handouts, mind you, but if you ever want to collaborate, Rylan grinned. I'd love to hear about them. Partners? He held out his hand. Chloe took it, her smile radiant. Partners? Meanwhile, across town, Kim's life was unraveling at an alarming rate. The cracks in Nate's facade were turning into gaping chasms, and she found herself trapped in a nightmare of her own making. It started with little things, bills arriving marked, final notice, hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when she entered the room. But soon, the truth became impossible to ignore. What do you mean, the business is failing? Kim's voice echoed through their penthouse apartment. You said we were doing great. Nate paced the room, running his hands through his hair. I thought we could turn it around. The investors were supposed to come through. But now? Now what? Kim demanded. Nate's shoulders slumped. Now we're broke. Worse than broke. We're in debt up to our eyeballs. Kim felt the room spin. This couldn't be happening. Not again. But the cars, the apartment, our lifestyle, all smoke and mirrors, Nate said bitterly. Leased cars, borrowed money. I thought if we looked successful, we'd become successful. Fake it till you make it, right? Kim sank onto the couch, head in her hands. Oh God. Oh God. What have I done? As the days passed, their situation went from bad to worse. The penthouse was repossessed, the cars taken away. They moved into a tiny apartment in a part of town Kim had once turned her nose up at. She tried reaching out to her old friends, but word of their downfall had spread quickly. Doors that had once been open to her were now firmly shut. Even Stacy, who had introduced her to Nate, wouldn't return her calls. In desperation, Kim tried to restart her real estate career. But her reputation was in tatters, and no one was willing to take a chance on her. One night, after another fruitless day of job hunting, Kim found herself staring at her phone. Rylan's number glowed on the screen, a beacon of hope in her darkening world. Her finger hovered over the call button. Don't even think about it. Nate's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, eyes hard. You made your choice, Kim. You're with me now, for better or worse. Kim looked at him, really looked at him. Gone was the charming, confident man she'd thought she married. In his place stood a bitter, angry stranger. Is this really what you want? She asked softly. Nate's laugh was harsh. Want? Since when does what we want matter? This is what we've got, Kim. Better get used to it. As he stalked out of the room, Kim turned back to her phone. With trembling fingers, she pressed call. It went straight to voicemail. You've reached Rylan Grady. I'm unavailable to take your call. If this is a business matter, please contact my assistant. If this is a personal call, well, you probably shouldn't have this number. Kim's breath caught in her throat. Even his voicemail sounded different. Confident, successful. Everything she'd once thought she wanted. Rylan, she whispered into the phone. I'm sorry. I was wrong. About everything. Please call me back. I need help. She ended the call, tears streaming down her face. But deep down, she knew there would be no rescue, no second chance. She'd made her choice, and now she had to live with it. Across town, Rylan's phone buzzed with a missed call notification. He glanced at it, saw Kim's name, and without a moment's hesitation, pressed block number. Everything okay? Chloe asked, looking up from her laptop where she'd been working on their latest project. Rylan smiled, a genuine, contented smile. Yeah, he said. Everything's perfect. As he turned back to their work, Rylan felt the last vestiges of his old life fall away. The future stretched out before him, bright with possibility. And for the first time in a long time, he was excited to see where it would lead. Rylan sat in his home office, fingers flying across the keyboard as he put the finishing touches on his latest project. The warm glow of success surrounded him, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing elsewhere in Silicon Valley. A knock on the door interrupted his focus. Chloe poked her head in, a concerned look on her face. Have you seen the news? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Rylan leaned back in his chair, stretching. No, I've been buried in code all morning. What's up? Chloe walked in, tablet in hand. It's about Nate Cole. You know, Kim's new husband? His company just filed for bankruptcy. It's all over the tech blogs. A cold smile played at the corners of Rylan's mouth. Is that so? How unfortunate for him. Chloe studied him closely. Rylan, you wouldn't have had anything to do with this, would you? Rylan met her gaze steadily. Let's just say I made some strategic moves in the business world. If those moves happen to impact Mr. Cole's company, well, that's just the nature of the game, isn't it? Rylan, Chloe said, her tone a mix of admiration and concern. What exactly did you do? Rylan stood, walking to the window that overlooked the San Francisco skyline. I may have used some of my connections to ensure that Cole's company was blacklisted from key financial networks. Made it nearly impossible for him to secure the funding he needed to keep his house of cards standing. Chloe's eyes widened. That's ruthless. Rylan turned to face her, his expression hard. It's business, Chloe. Cole was running a scam, preying on people's desire for a flashy lifestyle. He just picked the wrong mark this time, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he married your ex-wife. Chloe pressed. Rylan's laugh was without humor. Oh, it has everything to do with that. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Kim made her choice. Now they both get to live with the consequences. Chloe was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she nodded slowly. I get it. I don't know if I agree with it, but I get it. Just be careful, okay? Don't let this consume you. Rylan's expression softened as he looked at her. I won't. This is the end of it, I promise. From here on out, it's all about our future. Across town, the fallout from Nate's business collapse was reaching a fever pitch. Kim paced their small apartment, phone pressed to her ear. What do you mean? There's nothing left, she hissed into the receiver. There has to be something. Nate's voice crackled through the speaker, defeated and angry. It's gone, Kim. All of it. The business, our savings, everything. We're wiped out. Kim felt the room spin. She collapsed onto the worn couch, her free hand clutching at her hair. How could this happen? You promised me. You said we'd be set for life. I thought we would be. Nate shouted back. But someone's been working against us, Kim. Blocking every move, cutting off every lifeline. It's like they knew exactly where to hit us. A chill ran down Kim's spine. She thought back to her last conversation with Rylan, the cold look in his eyes when he revealed his true wealth. Could he have? Nate, she said slowly, I think I might know who's behind this. What? Who? Nate demanded. Kim took a deep breath. My ex-husband, Rylan. He's got more money and influence than I ever realized. And he's not the forgiving type. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Nate spoke again, his voice was low and dangerous. You're telling me this now? After everything's gone to hell? Jesus Christ, Kim. What else don't I know about you? The line went dead. Kim stared at the phone in her hand, tears welling in her eyes. How had it all gone so wrong? Days passed, and their situation grew increasingly desperate. Bill collectors called constantly. The refrigerator stood empty more often than not. Kim found herself doing something she never thought she'd have to do again, scanning the want ads for any job that would take her. One evening, as she sat at their small kitchen table, circling potential leads in the newspaper, Nate stormed in. His eyes were wild, his clothes disheveled. Pack your bags, he barked, heading for the bedroom. Kim jumped up, following him. What? Nate, what's going on? Nate was throwing clothes haphazardly into a suitcase. We're leaving. Tonight. I've got a lead on a fresh start in L.A. An old buddy of mine says he can get us set up. Kim's heart raced. Leave? But what about our lives here? Our friends? Our Nate whirled on her, eyes blazing. What friends, Kim? What life? It's all gone. And it's all because of you and your rich ex-husband. Kim recoiled as if she'd been slapped. That's not fair. I didn't know. You should have known. Nate roared. You were married to the guy. God, I was such an idiot. I thought I'd landed a meal ticket, but instead I got stuck with a clueless gold digger who couldn't even pick the right mark. The words hung in the air between them, ugly and raw. Kim felt something inside her snap. Is that all I am to you? She asked, her voice quiet but steel-edged. A meal ticket? Nate deflated slightly, running a hand through his hair. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I'm scared, Kim. Everything's falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it. Kim looked at him, really looked at him. Gone was the confident, charming man she'd fallen for. In his place stood a desperate, broken shell. She made a decision. Go, she said softly. Nate blinked. What? Go to LA, make your fresh start. But I won't be coming with you. Kim, don't be stupid, Nate pleaded. We're in this together. For better or worse, remember? Kim shook her head, a sad smile on her face. No, Nate. We're not. We never were. We were just two people using each other to get what we thought we wanted. But it's time to face reality. It's over. Nate stared at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he zipped up his suitcase and walked out the door. Kim listened as his footsteps faded down the hallway, waited for the sound of the elevator doors closing. Then, alone in the quiet apartment, she allowed herself to cry. Weeks passed. Kim threw herself into job hunting with a desperation born of true need. She swallowed her pride, taking a position as a receptionist at a small real estate firm, a far cry from her dreams of being a top agent. But it was a start. She downsized even further, moving into a tiny studio apartment in a less desirable part of town. Every day was a struggle, but slowly, she began to rebuild. One afternoon, as she was walking home from work, she spotted a familiar figure coming out of a high-end restaurant. Rylan, looking sharp in a tailored suit, laughing with a group of well-dressed executives. And on his arm, a woman Kim didn't recognize, pretty, in an understated way, her smile genuine as she looked up at Rylan. Kim felt a pang in her chest, not of jealousy, exactly, but of regret for what might have been. She watched as Rylan helped the woman into a waiting car, his hand lingering on her back. He looked happy, truly happy, in a way Kim realized she'd never seen him before. Before she could stop herself, Kim called out, Rylan! He turned, his eyes scanning the street before landing on her. The warmth in his expression cooled instantly. Kim, he said, his voice neutral. This is a surprise. Kim approached cautiously, suddenly aware of her shabby work clothes and scuffed shoes. I saw you, and how are you? Rylan's eyebrow raised slightly. I'm doing well. Very well, in fact. And you? Kim forced a smile. Oh, getting by. Starting over. Rylan nodded, his expression unreadable. I heard about Nate's business troubles. Shame that. The lack of sincerity in his voice was palpable. Kim felt a flicker of anger. Did you have something to do with that? She asked, her voice low. Rylan's smile was cold. The tech world can be cutthroat, Kim. Nate should have done his due diligence before trying to play with the big boys. You ruined us, Kim hissed. Was it your plan all along? To watch us crash and burn? I didn't ruin anyone, Rylan replied calmly. I simply allowed the consequences of your choices to play out. You wanted flash and excitement, Kim. Well, this is where that path led. Kim felt tears pricking at her eyes. I made a mistake, Ree. I know that now. I'm sorry. For everything. For a moment, something flickered in Rylan's eyes, a hint of the man she'd once known. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by cool indifference. Your apology is noted, he said flatly. But it changes nothing. You made your choice, Kim. Now you get to live with it. Just like I've had to live with mine. Rylan, please, Kim pleaded. I'm struggling. I could use some help just to get back on my feet. Rylan's laugh was without humor. Help? From me? I'm not your safety net, Kim. I'm not your second choice. I'm not anything to you anymore. And that's exactly how I wanted to stay. He turned to go, then paused, looking back at her. Word of advice? Stop looking for someone else to solve your problems. Stand on your own 2 feet for once. It might do you some good. With that, he walked away, leaving Kim standing alone on the sidewalk, the gulf between their lives never more apparent. Back at home, Rylan found Chloe waiting for him, a concerned look on her face. I saw you talking to Kim, she said softly. Are you okay? Rylan sank onto the couch beside her, suddenly feeling drained. Yeah, I'm fine. It was strange, seeing her like that. Chloe took his hand. Do you regret it? What you did to Nate's company? Rylan was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he shook his head. No, I don't. They made their choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences. And now, Chloe pressed. Is it over? Rylan looked at her, really looked at her. He saw concern in her eyes, but also understanding. And love. Real, unconditional love. Yes, he said firmly. It's over. Kim, Nate, all of it, that's the past. You're my future, Chloe. You and the life we're building together. Chloe smiled, leaning in to kiss him softly. Good, because I got some news. Rylan raised an eyebrow. Oh. Chloe's grin widened. Remember that socially responsible tech initiative we've been working on? Well, I just got word. We've secured full funding. We're go for launch. Rylan felt a genuine smile spread across his face. This was what mattered. Not revenge, not old wounds, but creating something meaningful. Something that could make a real difference. Partner, he said, pulling Chloe close, I think we've got work to do. As they bent over Chloe's laptop, excitedly discussing plans for their new venture, Rylan felt a sense of peace settle over him. He'd walked through fire, faced his demons, and come out stronger on the other side. Kim, Nate, the pain of the past, all of it faded into insignificance compared to the bright future ahead. He'd learned his lesson, paid his dues, and now it was time to truly live. Epilogue. Months later, Rylan sat in his home office, sipping coffee as he scrolled through the morning news. A small item caught his eye: a notice of foreclosure on a small apartment in a rundown part of town. The name on the notice, Kimberly Bowers Cole. For a moment, Rylan's finger hovered over the trackpad, tempted to dig deeper. But then he heard Chloe's laugh from the kitchen, smelled breakfast cooking, and realized he didn't care. Not anymore. He closed the browser window and stood, stretching. It was a beautiful day, full of possibility, and he had far better things to do than dwell on the past. As he joined Chloe in the kitchen, pulling her into a warm embrace, Rylan knew with absolute certainty he'd made the right choice. This was his second chance, his new beginning, and he wasn't going to waste a single moment of it.